Hello guys. Welcome to Soul Fiction. So in this video, we will see the what if Naruto had the power of all sins from 7 deadly sins. Check the summary in the description. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's dive into the story. Naruto Uzumaki had always been different, though he could never pinpoint why. Even before he discovered the 9-tailed fox sealed within him, he had sensed a second, inexplicable reservoir of power beneath his skin. It often shimmered at the edge of his consciousness, elusive yet reassuring, like a secret friend whispering that someday he would become truly invincible. For years, that feeling was all he had. No family. Hardly any friends. A whole village that saw him as a pariah and a troublemaker. But deep within, he knew something grand stirred. He experienced the first real shift on the day he finally became a genin. Standing before the academy, forehead protector shining, he let out a proud laugh. It was a triumphant moment, and yet something nagged at him, like a slumbering beast stirring in the back of his mind. As Iruka congratulated him, Naruto felt an odd warmth crawl along his spine. It was a fleeting moment, gone before he could really question it, but it left his fingertips tingling with dormant energy. His classmates noticed the strange spark in his eyes. Sasuke Uchiha, usually cold and focused, frowned slightly, as if sensing a change he didn't like. Team assignments came quickly. Naruto found himself in Team 7 with Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha, overseen by the enigmatic Kakashi Hitaki. Naruto's excitement soared at the thought of spending more time around Sakura. Sure, she didn't exactly treat him kindly most of the time, but he harbored a fierce, youthful crush that fueled his stubborn optimism. On the other hand, Sasuke was the top rookie of their class, praised for his skill and cool demeanor. Only weeks ago, Naruto would have simmered with envy at the Uchiha's effortless talent, but now something had changed. Instead of feeling overshadowed, Naruto held a strange confidence, a certainty that he could surpass Sasuke if he put his mind to it. Even Sakura, though taken with Sasuke's mystique, couldn't help noticing that Naruto's usual clumsy bravado had sharpened into something more controlled. Kakashi's initial bell test thrust them into their first real challenge. Though it ended with the iconic lesson about teamwork, there was a moment in the test that stuck out in Naruto's mind. Right as he prepared his usual headlong charge at Kakashi, his legs had nearly locked in place. A wave of heat rippled through him, and in a blink, he felt as though time slowed. Kakashi's watchful eye definitely registered that flicker of abnormal chakra, as did Sasuke, whose gaze snapped to Naruto in confusion. Sakura missed it, too focused on her own struggles. The moment passed, Naruto ended up tied to a stump, and the day moved on, overshadowed by Kakashi's lecture about cooperation and loyalty. Still, the Jonin had a thoughtful look in his single visible eye, as if he suspected something deeper was at play inside Naruto. In the days that followed, Team 7 completed a string of mundane D-rank missions, from dog catching to fence painting. Routine chores might have bored Naruto under any normal circumstance, but with this new vigor coursing through him, he tackled every task with stubborn enthusiasm. Sakura alternated between rolling her eyes and smiling despite herself. Sasuke kept his distance, but Naruto noticed the Uchiha occasionally glaring at him as though analyzing a potential rival. Whenever their eyes met, Naruto felt flickers of heat travel through his body, nothing painful, but insistent, like some hidden part of him recognized a challenge. He began to notice his senses sharpening at unexpected times. He would hear the subdued scraping of a hidden shuriken in Sasuke's palm, or sense Sakura's presence even when she was quiet. Sometimes, his hunger would spike uncontrollably, as if he couldn't get enough energy. Other times, a wave of lazy complacency threatened to drag him into daydreams. He chalked it up to the stress of becoming a real ninja, never quite realizing that these episodes were each connected to a facet of the powers awakening within him. Powers that mirrored the ancient 7 deadly sins. Wrath, pride, envy, greed, gluttony, lust, and sloth. It was the craving for a more dangerous mission, fueled, perhaps, by a subtle nudge of pride, that led Naruto to brazenly demand that the third Hokage assign them something beyond weeding gardens. That boldness culminated in the fateful C-rank mission to escort Tazuna to the Land of Waves. Kakashi merely closed his book, sighed, and accepted the request. Sakura was timidly excited. Sasuke appeared calmly intrigued. Naruto felt a roiling anticipation within him, as though his second, deeper power was hungry for conflict. The journey began uneventfully. Tazuna, a grizzled bridge builder from the land of waves, exuded a pessimistic air that rubbed Naruto the wrong way. After a few hours on the road, Naruto was the first to spot a suspicious puddle on an otherwise dry path. The demon brothers leapt out, blades rattling with lethal intent. Kakashi pretended to be caught off guard, letting the genin respond. Sasuke sprang into action, swifter than expected, intercepting one of the attackers with a precise kick. But something inside Naruto exploded with savage excitement. He met the second enemy with a ferocity that shocked everyone, including himself. One instant, he was fumbling for a kunai. The next, his palm felt scorching hot, and he found himself swinging with unexpected speed. His blow knocked the masked enemy clean off his feet. For a heartbeat, Naruto felt a furious, almost bestial exhilaration rage through his veins. Wrath awakening to the taste of combat. The demon brother he struck went sailing into a tree, snapping branches. Sakura gasped, wide-eyed. Sasuke froze mid-fight. Kakashi swiftly intervened, subduing both attackers. Tazuna stared, too frightened to speak. Naruto's own heartbeat hammered in his ears. The heat vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving him disoriented. Had he used the Nine Tails chakra? He couldn't recall. All he knew was that a primal surge had lent him staggering strength. Kakashi eyed him with curiosity. No one else commented yet, but the tension in the air was palpable. Sasuke's gaze was heavier than ever, and the corners of his mouth turned downward in a scowl. Sakura, meanwhile, hovered uncertainly near Naruto, as if worried he might suddenly pass out. That skirmish was but a glimpse of the real danger. Tazuna reluctantly admitted that he had withheld information. This wasn't a mere C-rank mission. Powerful people wanted him dead, including the notorious missing nin Zabuza Momochi. Kakashi considered turning back, but Naruto stubbornly insisted they push forward. He was uncharacteristically confident, not the usual brash overconfidence but a certain steel in his voice that made even Sasuke blink. Something about Naruto seemed larger than life in that moment, so Kakashi relented, promising he'd protect them if things got too hairy. Their next confrontation began in the thick mists near the land of waves. Zabuza, known as the Demon of the Hidden Mist, unleashed a suffocating mist technique that obscured the bridge. Team 7 tensed, searching for any sign of the assassin. When Zabuza finally struck, he proved far more formidable than the Demon Brothers. Kakashi engaged him head-on, leaving Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura to guard Tazuna. From the swirl of mist, a swirling slash of water shot forward at breathtaking speed. Naruto turned in time to see Kakashi locked in a water prison, immobilized, while Zabuza sneered menacingly at the rest of them. Fear should have paralyzed Naruto, but instead, something inside him roared to life. He recalled how, at the academy, he had always wanted to be recognized. A current of pride, vast and unyielding, coursing alongside that raw wrath. Pride spurred him to step forward instead of shrink back. Zabuza hurled a pair of shuriken at him, but Naruto twisted out of the way, surprising even himself with his agility. Beside him, Sasuke readied his own barrage of shuriken. Sakura shouted for Naruto and Sasuke to coordinate, her voice on the edge of panic. Tazuna cowered, praying that the two boys could do something about the Jonin-level threat before them. Naruto's body thrummed with a boiling mixture of confidence and anger. He glanced at Sasuke. In that fleeting moment, each recognized the other as an ally, however strained their rivalry might be. They launched an improvised plan. Sasuke provided covering fire with a torrent of shuriken, forcing Zabuza to shift his grip, ever so slightly loosening Kakashi's watery prison. Naruto took the opening to rush forward, weaving a half-formed shadow clone technique. Wrath pulsed in his bloodstream, pushing him beyond his normal limits. He slashed at Zabuza's wrist, missing by inches, but drawing the man's attention for a crucial second. Kakashi used that moment to break free, swirling in a vortex of water and lightning-fast strikes. Zabuza snarled, leaping back. Now with the advantage of freedom, Kakashi pressed the attack. Blow after blow echoed across the dull gray water. Naruto and Sasuke tried to stay close, looking for openings, but the intense exchange between two elite shinobi made it nearly impossible for them to slip in without getting slaughtered. Still, Naruto noticed that the burning feeling lingered in his chest, poised to unleash more force. He wondered if that was a sign of the nine tails stirring again. If so, why didn't it feel quite the same? Soon, the confrontation ended with Kakashi gaining the upper hand. Zabuza, battered and momentarily disarmed, found himself in dire straits. Then came the sudden appearance of a masked hunter Nin who launched Senbon needles at Zabuza, apparently slaying him on the spot. The newcomer whisked Zabuza's body away under the pretense of disposing of it, leaving Team 7 to puzzle over the abrupt end to the battle. They reached Tezuna's home afterward, a modest abode perched near the incomplete bridge. It wasn't safe outside with potential assassins lurking, so they hunkered down, preparing for Zabuza's possible return. Naruto felt restless. He had felt unstoppable power welling in him, but the fight had ended too soon. Something about his reflexes, his strength, his mind, they all felt sharper, but he didn't understand how or why. The swirling questions left him anxious. As the sun set, Sakura hovered around Naruto, gingerly asking if he was hurt. "I'm fine," he said more gently than usual. He couldn't deny enjoying her concern, but he also felt a pang of guilt. He knew her heart wasn't entirely in it. She was still far more focused on Sasuke's well-being. Yet there was a flicker of something in her eyes when she saw how composed he was. She gave him a half-smile and told him to be careful, then walked off to check on Sasuke. Naruto sighed, heart twisting with complicated emotions. That night, he couldn't sleep. A humid breeze rolled through the open window in Tezuna's cramped guest room, where he and Sasuke were lying on floor mats. Kakashi was asleep in another corner, though likely half aware of everything. Naruto stared at the ceiling, trying to pinpoint why he felt so restless. Closing his eyes, he tried to recall the sensation of that scorching power. It beckoned to him like a siren's call, but it was as difficult to grasp as morning mist. All he knew was that it made him feel unstoppable, almost like he was on the cusp of something enormous. He flicked his gaze toward Sasuke, who had turned onto his side. The Uchiha seemed deep in thought, his brow furrowed. It occurred to Naruto that maybe Sasuke was also wrestling with his own frustrations. The day's events had proven that raw talent alone might not be enough. Naruto let his eyes drift shut, ironically fueled by the mania of his warring emotions, yet finding his mind finally settling down to an uneasy rest. Morning came too soon. Kakashi, leaning on a crutch due to injuries from the fight, drilled Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura with a stern pep talk. Zabuza was likely still alive, he said, and they needed to prepare for another confrontation. That was enough to spark Naruto's determination. They hurried to the incomplete bridge, hoping their presence would deter an attack on Tezuna and the workers. Midway through the day, the mists rolled in ominously, thicker than before. A hush fell over the workers as every sense screamed danger. Kakashi tensed, quickly forming hand seals for detection. Sure enough, Zabuza and the masked hunter Nin, Haku, as it turned out, stepped from the swirling fog. Haku's eyes were sad but resolute as he confronted Sasuke, while Zabuza locked gazes with Kakashi, silent fury etched into his features. Naruto found himself face to face with a moral dilemma. Haku didn't seem evil, exactly. There was a strange gentleness in the masked boy's voice when he asked Sasuke not to force his hand. Yet the prospect of losing or letting Tezuna die was unthinkable. Confusion rippled through Naruto. That confusion, combined with fear for his teammates, ignited something deep inside, the echo of wrath, accompanied by a surge of pride. He rushed forward, determined to protect everyone. Haku's speed was incredible, and Naruto found himself momentarily outmatched. Haku formed a dome of ice mirrors, trapping Sasuke inside. Panicked, Naruto searched for a way in, eventually crashing through one of the mirrors, only to be bombarded by a flurry of senbon. Pain lanced through his arms and legs, but an even greater heat simmered underneath his skin, dulling the agony. He felt adrenaline spike, and with it came an undercurrent of something more potent, a type of potent greed for victory, a craving to outdo Haku that propelled him forward. With every needle that struck, Naruto staggered, only to grit his teeth and push onward. Sasuke shouted at him to be careful, though his voice was tight with frustration. Blood trickled down Naruto's fingertips. Another barrage came, and this time Naruto roared, body surging with raw chakra. It glowed red for an instant, reminiscent of the Nine Tails cloak, but there was also a flicker of something else. like a swirl of purple aura or an unseen set of eyes peering from the void. Haku's next assault shattered against Naruto's outstretched hands, as though an invisible shield had manifested. Sasuke gaped, blinking sweat from his eyes, uncertain what he had just witnessed. "Don't underestimate me," Naruto snarled, voice low and resonant. Pride and wrath mingled to transform him into a fearsome force. Even Haku's calm composure faltered. Senbon clattered to the bridge, rendered useless by the sudden spike in Naruto's chakra. For a heartbeat, Naruto felt unstoppable. He forced himself forward, shattering an ice mirror with a single punch. The shockwave threw Haku off balance, fracturing the technique's control. Across the bridge, Kakashi and Zabuza clashed in a swirl of kunai and water jutsu, each strike threatening to end the other's life. Sakura protected Tazuna as best she could, her eyes darting worriedly toward Naruto, who raged within the ice prison. Tension mounted by the second, and the swirling mists turned the bridge into a bleak battleground. In that desperate fight, Sasuke displayed his Sharingan, managing to track Haku's rapid movements. But Naruto could tell Sasuke was hitting his limit. That's when a wave of unfamiliar anxiety coursed through Naruto, an envy of Sasuke's control, tempered by gluttony for more power, more strength. It was as if multiple emotions hammered at his psyche, each tempting him with a different promise. He wanted to best Sasuke, wanted to protect him, wanted to prove himself. For the briefest moment, Naruto's senses blurred. Then his vision cleared, and he saw Haku launching a final Sasuke's exposed flank. With a snarl, Naruto lunged, bridging the gap in an eye blink. He shoved Sasuke aside, letting the Senbon lodge in his own shoulder and ribs. Pain flared, but an odd, comforting numbness immediately washed over him, as though another presence was sharing the burden. To the shock of both Haku and Sasuke, Naruto barely flinched. He felt unstoppable, like a titan on the verge of unleashing carnage. The entire air around him seemed to crackle. You're hurting people I care about," he said, voice taut with raw emotion. There was an almost visible swirl in his eyes. Haku hesitated, perhaps taken aback by Naruto's fury. Sasuke, breathing heavily, tried to step forward, but Naruto's outspread arms signaled him to stay back. "I won't let you," Naruto growled, sounding older, more commanding than any genin had a right to be. Haku locked eyes with him, reading Naruto's sincerity, and in that instant, Naruto unleashed a blow that fractured every remaining ice mirror in a violent chain reaction. The shards rained down like glittering knives. Haku flew back, landing in a heap at the far edge of the bridge. The swirling mist parted enough for everyone to see the outcome. Even Zabuza paused, stunned. Kakashi used that opening to gain the upper hand, pinning Zabuza's arms behind his back in a paralyzing hold. The next moments were thick with tension. Haku, gravely injured, dragged himself in front of Zabuza to shield him, prepared to give his last breath in service to the man who had taken him in. Kakashi's eyes promised swift retribution. Naruto staggered out of the remnants of the dome, chest heaving. Blood ran in thin rivulets down his arms, but his stance was unbroken. For a moment, he locked eyes with Haku, uncertain what to do. He had never wanted to kill anyone, but the searing power within him demanded resolution. Sakura let out a relieved cry when she saw Naruto still standing. Sasuke's expression was grim. He recognized that Naruto had displayed a terrifying level of strength just now. Tazuna stood behind Sakura, trembling and more convinced than ever that these children were no ordinary genin. Then a sudden hush fell over the bridge. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Gato, the cruel businessman who controlled the shipping lanes of the Land of Waves, emerged with a ragged band of thugs, sneering. He revealed that he had intended to betray Zabuza, mocking the notion of loyalty and calling Haku just a pawn. Zabuza's eyes narrowed with anger. Haku, on the ground, closed his eyes, seemingly heartbroken. Naruto felt an intense hatred for Gato's cruelty welling up. Something within him, wrath, tempted him to lash out and end the man where he stood. But Naruto held it in check, funneling the fury into unwavering resolve. Zabuza, his pride stung by Gato's betrayal and fueled by the loyalty he felt for Haku, ripped free from Kakashi's hold in one final, desperate act. Blood sprayed from reopened wounds as he charged Gato, cutting through thugs like a whirlwind, taking mortal blows in the process. The fog parted in a surge of wind as Zabuza eventually collapsed, mortally wounded but content that Gato lay dead. Kakashi silently acknowledged the twisted sense of honor in the Mist Ninja's final act. Naruto rushed forward, kneeling beside Haku. The boy was fading fast, blood seeping across the shattered remnants of his mask. Tears pricked at Naruto's eyes, for reasons he couldn't fully articulate. They had been enemies, but Haku's devotion and kindness shone through the carnage. Naruto gently placed a trembling hand on Haku's shoulder. The swirling urges in Naruto's head quieted for an instant, replaced by an odd sense of sorrow and empathy. "Thank you," Haku murmured, breath shallow. "You fought for what you believe in. I admire that." He looked up at Naruto, who bit down on his lip to keep from crying. "Protect the ones you love," Haku whispered, and then he fell still. Kakashi bowed his head in brief, unspoken respect. Sasuke, exhausted, stood behind Naruto, fists clenched. Sakura looked away, trying not to cry openly. Tazuna swallowed hard, thinking of how close they had all come to death. Slowly, the tension ebbed as the threat dissipated. A breeze rolled over the now silent battleground of shattered ice and fallen mercenaries. In the aftermath, Naruto's limbs trembled, though his resolve remained strong. The powers swirling in him felt subdued, as if they'd temporarily receded. Kakashi approached, placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "You did well," he said simply, voice uncharacteristically gentle. Naruto stared at the broken mask in his hand, eyes burning with unshed tears. They helped Tazuna finish the bridge, a monument to the Land of Waves' newfound hope. As the villagers, led by a boy named Inari, rallied against Gato's men, the oppressive reign of fear lifted. Naruto, battered but still standing, found himself the focal point of gratitude and awe. The feeling was strange. He'd lived so long as an outcast in Konoha, and now these people in another land looked at him like a hero. It didn't fill him with smug satisfaction. Instead, it lit a deeper resolve to do better, to carry the dreams of others on his shoulders. Their return journey to the Leaf Village was subdued. Each member of Team 7 wore a heavier weight on their hearts, changed by the realities of real combat. Sasuke had grown quieter, though the restless frustration in him was clear. Sakura tried to keep things light, offering Naruto half-smiles and small talk. She was no longer sure how to treat him. He had shown such fierce power. He was the class clown, and yet he had trounced Haku's lethal abilities. Kakashi maintained his enigmatic calm, but a subtle watchfulness lingered in his gaze whenever he glanced at Naruto. The Jonin had questions he didn't voice yet. At the gates of Konoha, they dispersed to their homes, promising to meet again after some much-needed rest. Naruto felt hollow as he trudged through the village streets, memories of the battle swirling through his mind. Here and there, villagers whispered behind his back, still not entirely comfortable with the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, but Naruto barely noticed them. He was too lost in introspection. That night, in his cramped apartment, he collapsed on his bed and stared at the ceiling, feeling a strange mixture of guilt, pride, and yearning for clarity. His entire body ached with the bruises and cuts from the fight, yet he felt a deeper exhaustion in his soul. He sensed the Nine Tails chakra stirring within him, like a malevolent presence scraping at the corners of his consciousness. But overlaying that familiar fox-laced energy was something else, something ancient. It felt warm yet ominous. He was reminded of the times he felt unstoppable fury, overwhelming confidence, ravenous hunger for more power, or even the disorienting wave of envy he felt toward Sasuke's calm skill. The swirling puzzle pieces began to align in his mind. When he finally drifted off to sleep, he dreamed of a vast, shadowy chamber. Flickering torches lit towering statues, each carved into a monstrous visage. He recognized them not by face, but by a sense of intangible resonance: wrath, pride, greed, gluttony, envy, lust, sloth. 7 pillars, each pulsing with primal energy, and in the center stood an indistinct figure. Its voice was neither male nor female, but something ancient and resonant, telling him that he was chosen to bear the powers of the 7 deadly sins. In the dream, Naruto couldn't move or speak, only listen to the echoing words about balancing unimaginable power with the weight of responsibility. The final whisper in his mind was a single word: soon. He woke with a start, drenched in cold sweat. Pale light crept through the blinds, heralding dawn. His heart thundered as he recalled the dream. For a moment, panic seized him, but then came a surge of determination that steadied his breathing. Maybe it was just a bizarre nightmare, but it felt too real. He sat up, pressing he flickers of hidden energies still curled in his veins. He resolved, then and there, to figure out what was going on. No matter the secret behind this new power, be it connected to the Nine Tails or something else, he would master it. He had to. When Naruto left his apartment that morning, the sky was bright, the air crisp. The village bustled with life as shops opened for the day. He felt oddly renewed, despite his battered body. On his way to the training grounds, he caught sight of Hinata Hyuga watching him from behind a fence post. Their eyes met briefly, and she offered a shy smile. Strangely, her cheeks colored more than usual. Naruto gave her a friendly wave. He didn't notice the curious spark in her pale eyes, but it was there. Something about him had changed, and Hinata, ever observant in her quiet way, saw it clearly. At the training grounds, Sasuke was already there, going through an intense set of drills. He stopped when he saw Naruto approach, tensing as if unsure what to say. Eventually, he just nodded, and Naruto did the same. For a second, that was enough. Both recognized an evolving rivalry, built now on a respect that neither quite knew how to articulate. Sakura arrived late, apologizing breathlessly. She brightened when she saw them both, then hesitated as she recalled the events of the Land of Waves. "Hey, you two," she managed, an odd mix of nerves and relief in her voice. Naruto grinned, though less raucously than usual. A flicker of warmth spread through him at the sight of her concern, and he tamped it down, deciding not to read too much into it. He promised himself he would get stronger, not just for himself but to protect her, to protect all his friends. The memory of Haku's words and the final moments on that bridge lingered, fueling that vow. Kakashi joined them soon after, eye creasing in mild amusement at the silent tension. If he suspected anything about Naruto's swirling powers, he didn't say. Instead, he simply announced that they'd begin training for the upcoming Chunin exams, which he believed would be announced soon. Naruto's heart leapt. Another chance to prove himself, another test of strength. He glanced at Sasuke, who smirked. Sakura squared her shoulders, determined to pull her weight, and in Naruto's chest, the seven sins slept like coiled serpents, waiting for their next chance to emerge. Little did he know, far away in the shadows of Konoha's walls, a figure watched him through the lens of a crystal orb, expression inscrutable. Rumors had started to swirl among the village elders. Unexplainable fluctuations in Naruto's chakra. Disturbing flickers of power during the Land of Waves mission. The third Hokage had his own suspicions about the Nine Tails, but he sensed something else at play too, something older. Without concrete proof, he could only watch and wait, quietly hoping that Naruto would find guidance rather than destruction in whatever power he housed. That night, as Naruto drifted off to sleep once more, his last conscious thought lingered on Haku's final plea. Protect the ones you love. In the dream, the same chamber loomed before him. The seven statues glowed faintly. He stepped forward, no longer frozen in place. A voice called to him, and he took another step, unafraid. Whatever this new power was, he would claim it on his own terms. He would rewrite destiny if he had to. And so began Naruto's journey, not just as the container of the Nine Tails, but as the living vessel of all seven deadly sins. The gentle illusions of youth slipped away, replaced by a turbulent destiny that would test every bond he forged. He would learn, through trial and heartbreak, that unimaginable power always came at a cost. Yet even in the face of that burden, Naruto would press on, blazing a path through darkness with an unbreakable will. A spirit forged from heartbreak, sealed by hope, and ignited by the fires of seven ancient powers he barely understood. By the time dawn touched the village roofs with golden light, Naruto was already up, mind spinning with determination and curiosity. He had a feeling that everything in his life was about to escalate. He wasn't wrong. The day of the Chunin exams approached, and with it, countless opportunities for conflict, growth, and surprising alliances. In the quiet morning air, as birds chirped and villagers stirred, Naruto stood at the threshold of a new chapter. The real test of his powers was only beginning. The sun hung high over the bustling streets of Konoha, its warmth signaling the start of the Chunin exams. People lined up in clusters around the academy building, where competing genin from various villages gathered. Stirring amongst the crowd were rumors that the Leaf Village had a new rising star named Naruto Uzumaki, a kid rumored to possess monstrous power that defied explanation. Some whispered it was the Nine Tails, Others insisted it was simply overblown hype. Naruto, for his part, was too focused on getting stronger to worry about rumors. At least until they started trailing after him, dogged as a shadow. He'd spent the days since returning from the Land of Waves training relentlessly with Sasuke and Sakura under Kakashi's guidance. All the while, beneath the surface of his awareness, the strange energies linked to the 7 deadly sins waited. Occasionally, they'd flicker to life if Naruto got overly excited, hungry, or angry. But he'd managed to keep them largely contained, determined not to reveal his trump card until absolutely necessary. The morning of the exam registration, Naruto stood at the academy gates with Sakura by his side. Sasuke was nowhere in sight, presumably off brooding or practicing. Sakura glanced around at the throng of foreign shinobi, her expression shifting between nervousness and excitement. Naruto wore a fierce grin, trying to keep his roiling confidence in check. For once, he felt distinctly prepared, as if an invisible power had sharpened his senses. Before either of them could speak, they heard a familiar soft voice calling, "En Naruto, Sakura, good morning." They turned to see Hinata Hyuga approaching shyly. Behind her trailed Kiba and Shino, both from Team 8. Hinata's cheeks pinkened when Naruto flashed his usual bright grin. "Morning, Hinata," Naruto waved, ignoring Kiba's snicker. "You guys ready for this?" Kiba smirked, folding his arms. "Born ready. This year's gonna be interesting. Whole bunch of new faces, and everyone's talking about, well, you know." Sakura frowned. "Talking about what?" Kiba nudged his head in Naruto's direction. "There's chatter that Naruto's done something crazy again. Rumors about that mission in the Land of Waves. People say he single-handedly took down a bunch of rogue ninja." Naruto shrugged noncommittally. "Well, I had help. Sasuke and Kakashi-sensei were there too." His heart still panged at the memory of Haku, but he forced it aside. He didn't mind attention, but he didn't want to cheapen the sacrifice made on that bridge. Hinata smiled, looking both proud and worried. "I heard you were amazing." Warmth filled Naruto's chest at her earnest tone. Sometimes he wondered if Hinata was just incredibly kind or if there was something else behind that gentle admiration. He remembered how she'd been quietly supportive of him for as long as he could recall. Her encouragement bolstered him now more than ever. Sakura noticed how Hinata gazed at Naruto and rolled her eyes a bit, though not unkindly. She tugged on Naruto's sleeve. "Hey, come on, we should go find Sasuke and see what's up." They made their way through the throng, heading into the academy corridors. Everywhere Naruto looked, groups of genin clustered. Some from the Leaf, others sporting different village headbands. He picked out a trio of sand shinobi with peculiar outfits. One of them was a red-haired boy with an eerie calm about him. Naruto noticed the gourd strapped to his back and felt a strange prickle of warning. Another group from the Sound Village looked equally unsettling, exuding an arete. Eventually, they found Sasuke on the second floor, quietly observing a scene. 2 older-looking genin blocking a door while a bunch of rookies argued. An older boy was warning them that this was the exam room, and if they couldn't pass him, they were doomed. But Naruto recognized a subtle genjutsu at play. It wasn't really the correct room. Sasuke's smirk suggested he'd noticed it too. "Cut the crap," Sasuke said tersely. "We know this is an illusion." Annoyed, the older genin scowled. His partner lunged. In a burst of motion, Sasuke was poised to fight back, but Naruto also started forward, a hot pulse of competitive energy churning inside him. He suppressed it before it could flare into something bigger. He was trying not to expose his hidden abilities yet. Instead, he channeled just a trickle of that internal power, honing his reflexes. In a flash, he pivoted behind the attacker, hand at the man's shoulder. "Back off," Naruto said flatly. "We don't need any trouble." The older genin froze, eyes flicking to the orange-clad kid behind him. For a moment, it looked like he might press on, but then he gave a snort, stepping away. Sakura blinked, momentarily surprised at Naruto's calm, measured response. She'd expected him to charge in recklessly. Instead, he'd shown an almost Sasuke-like precision. That new composure made her look at him differently, as though seeing him in a new light. With the genjutsu exposed, the trickster genin let them pass. Wordlessly, Team 7 continued to the actual exam room. As they walked, Naruto felt a prickle at the back of his neck. He turned to see the unmistakable silhouette of Rock Lee from Team Guy. Lee's wide eyes focused on Sasuke at first, but then flicked to Naruto. He had a broad, sunny smile, but an intense glimmer burned behind his gaze. Naruto guessed Lee was itching to test his might against the strongest fighters in the exams. They crossed into the large hall where the first phase of the Chunin exams would begin. Rows of seats and desks were set up, proctored by a squad of stern-looking examiners. At the front stood Ibiki Morino, known for his interrogation expertise. Naruto recognized many familiar faces among the contestants. Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji from Team 10 waved them over. Tenten and Neji stood near Lee, quietly talking. Other unknown genin eyed them with varying degrees of curiosity or suspicion. Naruto sensed the shifting stares. Some kids from other villages whispered Naruto's name, pointing subtly. Had word traveled that he'd come back from a lethal mission practically unscathed? Or were they mixing him up with the Nine-Tails legend? A small part of him itched with pride at the attention, but he tempered it. Pride was a tricky facet of his powers. Useful but potentially dangerous if he indulged it too much. Instead, he tried to focus on the immediate task: passing the exam. Ibiki boomed out the rules. It was a written test first, designed to measure intellect and cunning. Naruto dreaded it in canon, but this time he felt more prepared. He wasn't exactly a bookworm, yet his newfound clarity of mind, likely linked to sloth, oddly enough, it sometimes bolstered his mental stamina. Or even lust, the drive to succeed, to want more knowledge, gave him surprising focus. He could glean enough from the test without cheating overtly, though he had no qualms about copying hints from Shino's precise movements or taking advantage of the subtle code signals from Sakura and Sasuke. When Ibiki revealed that final trick question, the entire room tensed. Naruto recalled the wave of panic that came with the threat of losing all chances at becoming a Chunin if they failed. But instead of trembling or doubting, he stood up without hesitation. He wasn't leaving, no matter what. That same dogged determination burned in his chest. Wrath flared slightly, combining with pride. He locked eyes with Ibiki and declared that he refused to give up. The defiance in his voice carried more weight than it had in canon, because behind that vow was the force of ancient energies. Grinning, Ibiki announced they'd all passed the first phase, those who had the courage to stay. It was a classic psychological test. Relieved cheers and sighs rippled through the remaining genin. Naruto let out a whoop of excitement, punching the air. Sakura and Sasuke gave small smiles of their own. The next phase began abruptly with the dramatic arrival of Enko Mitarashi through the window. Energetic and slightly unhinged, Enko corralled the genin and informed them that the second phase would be in the Forest of Death, a place teeming with creatures and survival challenges. It would test their combat instincts and teamwork. Naruto felt his heart thump eagerly. He'd been itching for a real test of skill. Shortly afterward, they gathered at the entrance to the imposing forest, ringed by tall barbed wire fences. Enko wasted no time handing out scrolls, heaven or earth, and explaining the objective. Each team needed to obtain the opposite scroll by any means necessary and make it to the tower in the center of the forest. The time limit was 5 days. Naruto exchanged a glance with Sasuke and Sakura. They all nodded. They could handle this. They stepped into the forest, the gates slammed shut behind them, and immediately an eerie stillness settled over the winding paths. Dense foliage blocked out most of the sunlight. Distant roars of unknown creatures set the nerves on edge. They moved cautiously at first, aware that traps and ambushes could lurk behind every tree. Naruto stayed near the front, senses on high alert. He felt tension coil in his body, tinged with a subtle excitement from greed, an almost addictive craving to prove that they were the best. Hours passed. Team 7 encountered a couple of minor skirmishes with random genin, but nothing too serious. They narrowly avoided a pitfall trap and continued deeper into the forest. By midday, they took a quick rest near a shallow stream. Sakura kept watch while Sasuke pored over the map Kakashi had given him. Naruto splashed water on his face, scanning the trees. Something felt off. Then a gust of wind whipped through the clearing, carrying an ominous presence. Leaves stirred violently, and Naruto's gut twisted. Before he could shout a warning, a monstrous snake slithered out of the undergrowth, jaws wide enough to swallow a person whole. Sasuke reacted instantly, flinging kunai. Naruto jumped, landing atop a fallen log, gathering chakra for a counterattack. Sakura gasped, stepping back in horror. The snake lunged, nearly snapping Sasuke in half, but Naruto dove in with a swift punch. He'd infused the blow with a flash of wrath, enough to knock the beast sideways into a tree. That was too big to be normal, Naruto muttered, panting. He could feel his heart pounding, adrenaline mixing with that shadowy power. Before they could process the situation, another presence materialized, a tall figure with pale skin and snake-like eyes. Orochimaru. Though disguised as a random grass shinobi, there was no mistaking his predatory aura. The man grinned, and a suffocating wave of killing intent pressed down on Team 7. Sakura stumbled, and Naruto felt the hairs on his arms stand on end. Sasuke's expression grew rigid. Such interesting prey, Orochimaru hissed. I'm looking for strong, promising students. And you? Uchiha Sasuke. And you? Naruto Uzumaki. Oh yes, you two are intriguing indeed. Naruto's mind spun. How did this grass nin know their names? Alarm bells rang in every corner of his consciousness, driving him to call upon his powers. But at the same time, a creeping dread squeezed his chest. This wasn't an ordinary threat. Even Zabuza hadn't radiated malice like this. Orochimaru felt old, powerful, cunning. Like a venomous serpent that toyed with its meal. Sasuke, eyes wide, managed to hurl shuriken at Orochimaru. But the man blurred out of sight, reappearing behind them without effort. Naruto, fists clenched, tried to sense an opening. A swirl of wrath tugged at him, urging him to source. Pride whispered that he could do it, that he was unstoppable. But a trickle of caution also rose from Sloth, reminding him not to fling himself into a trap. He exhaled, then launched a barrage of shadow clones, weaving through the trees in an attempt to box Orochimaru in. Sasuke joined in with a series of precise fire jutsu, forcing the target to dodge. Orochimaru slithered through their attacks, his laughter echoing among the branches. Sakura, heart-pounding, stayed in the back, scanning for any sign she could help. Suddenly, Orochimaru extended his neck in a grotesque stretch, jaws opening unnaturally wide, and bit Sasuke on the shoulder. Sasuke cried out, collapsing to his knees as an ominous black mark spread across his skin. Naruto's eyes went wide in horror. He lunged, but Orochimaru evaded, seemingly amused. Don't worry, my dear boy, Orochimaru hissed, addressing Naruto. You'll get your turn soon enough. But I have other plans for you, intriguing power swirling inside that body of yours. Something more than just the 9 tails. Naruto's vision flickered crimson. Wrath surged violently, fueled by the sight of Sasuke in agony. He roared, feeling the aura of the 9 tails seep into his veins, colliding with the sins. For an instant, he wanted to tear Orochimaru apart. But pride also reared its head, telling him to remain in control, to prove he was stronger without letting fury blind him. Torn between these clashing impulses, he rushed forward with a wild punch. Orochimaru sidestepped with snake-like elegance. He lashed out with a palm strike that sent Naruto crashing through the undergrowth. Shattered branches tore at Naruto's clothes and left welts on his arms. He coughed, chest tight, as Orochimaru turned to Sakura. Instinct propelled Naruto to get back up, ignoring the searing pain. He glimpsed Sasuke writhing on the ground, the cursed seal burning into his flesh. Now, Orochimaru said, it's time for me to depart. But remember this. The real test begins after the Chunin exams. I look forward to seeing what you become, Naruto Uzumaki. With that, Orochimaru vanished, leaving only the rustle of leaves in his wake. Fear and adrenaline mingled in Naruto's veins as he scrambled to Sasuke's side. Sakura knelt there, frantic. The black markings on Sasuke's skin pulsed eerily, and his face contorted in pain. What the hell was that? Naruto hissed, hands trembling. We've got to do something. Sakura shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't know what to do. We have to find shelter, try to keep Sasuke stable until we can get him medical help. But we can't give up on the exams, or we'll never get out of this forest. Naruto nodded, forcing down his panic. He swallowed, trying to summon the practical side of his mind. Okay, I'll carry Sasuke. Let's find a place to hide. Some safe spot. They carefully lifted Sasuke, who drifted in and out of consciousness. The next few hours were a frantic search through the forest for somewhere defensible. Eventually, they discovered a hollowed-out tree trunk forming a makeshift shelter. Sakura laid Sasuke on a patch of dry leaves. Naruto kept watch at the entrance, scanning for any sign of Orochimaru or other hostile teams. Time crawled. Day bled into late afternoon. Sasuke's breathing remained ragged, and the cursed mark refused to fade. Naruto's thoughts churned relentlessly. He blamed himself for not being fast enough, not being strong enough to stop Orochimaru. Wrath threatened to surface, but it was overshadowed by a gnawing sense of guilt. Envy rearing its head. Envy for more skill, more power, anything that could have saved Sasuke. A rustle of leaves snapped him out of his grim reverie. He tensed, readying a kunai, just as a group of sound genin emerged from the underbrush, drawn by the smell of blood and the presence of easy prey. Zaku, Kin, and Dosu. Naruto recognized them by their distinct sound headbands and malevolent smirks. They likely sensed Sasuke's vulnerability. Sakura darted to Naruto's side, her expression set, though fear shimmered in her eyes. Well, Zaku sneered. We heard there's a strong Uchiha around here. Too bad he's out cold. This should be easy. Dosu tapped the metal device on his arm, a faint ringing hum emanating from it. Hand over your scroll, or we'll take it from your corpses. Naruto's temper flared. He could almost taste the tang of wrath in the back of his throat. But he forced himself to remain composed. Over my dead body, he growled, stepping forward. Sakura, stay close to Sasuke. The fight erupted in a blink. Zaku fired pressurized blasts of air from tubes on his arms, ripping through the tree trunk. Naruto narrowly dodged, weaving between the streams of wind. A chunk of bark exploded where he'd been standing. Sakura, crouched protectively near Sasuke, threw a hail of kunai to distract the sound shinobi. But Dosu countered with a sonic pulse that disrupted her aim, sending her stumbling with a shriek of pain. Naruto hurled a pair of shadow clones into the fray, searching for an opening. Zaku's blasts took out the clones quickly, but that gave Naruto enough time to dart in. He channeled pride and wrath together, fueling a sudden burst of speed. His fist connected with Zaku's midsection, sending the sound ninja skidding across the ground. Meanwhile, Kin tried to flank Naruto with razor-thin senbon needles, but Sakura spotted her in time, intercepting with a well-timed kick. For an instant, Sakura's eyes flashed with determination. She'd promised herself she wouldn't be a burden. Dosu's sonic device whined ominously, unleashing a disorienting wave that rattled Naruto's senses. Stars danced in Naruto's vision. Blood trickled from his ears. He staggered, and in that vulnerable moment, Zaku recovered enough to slam an air blast directly into Naruto's chest. The impact launched him into a splintered log, knocking the wind out of him. Pain flared along his ribs. Sakura cried out, torn between defending Sasuke and rushing to Naruto's side. The sound trio advanced, confident they had the upper hand. Naruto tried to move, but Dosu aimed another sonic strike. The shrieking hum froze him in place, agony slicing through his head. Everything seemed to slow. Then a guttural groan came from behind Sakura. Sasuke's voice, raw with pain. Naruto, Sakura, get away. They turned to see Sasuke rising, black markings creeping across half his face. A dark aura radiated around him. His eyes burned with new power, and the cursed seal seethed like living flame on his skin. Naruto's breath caught. This Sasuke felt different, dangerously so. Without warning, Sasuke vanished in a burst of speed. Zaku tried to raise his arms, but Sasuke kicked him so hard his bones snapped, a sickening crack echoing through the clearing. Zaku's scream tore through the air. Dosu spun, unleashing a desperate sonic blast, but Sasuke evaded effortlessly, appearing at the man's flank. In a flash, Sasuke's fist smashed Dosu's sound device, sparks flying. Dosu collapsed, clutching his shattered arm. Kin froze, horrified, and stumbled backward. Naruto stood, still dizzy from the earlier assault, and watched in alarm. This wasn't just Sasuke fighting with skill. It was cruelty tinted by a savage, unrestrained power. Something in Naruto's chest stirred in response, a swirl of relief that they were winning, but also revulsion at the brutality. He had felt wrath's pull before, but even that had been overshadowed by reason. Sasuke, on the other hand, seemed to be losing himself to the curse mark's malevolence. Before Sasuke could finish Dosu off, Sakura rushed up, wrapping her arms around Sasuke from behind. "Stop," she cried. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Sasuke, this isn't you." For a tense heartbeat, Sasuke remained rigid, chest heaving. The black markings flickered, threatening to spread further. Then, slowly, they began to recede, leaving Sasuke swaying on his feet. His gaze, once feral, hurried to support him before he collapsed. The sound trio lay battered, their will to fight shattered. They dropped an earth scroll in their hasty retreat. Once they were gone, Naruto let out a shaky breath, checking on Sasuke. The Uchiha was conscious but confused, as though coming out of a nightmare. Sakura gently brushed hair away from Sasuke's forehead. "You're okay now," she whispered. "Don't move too much." "All right," Naruto said, swallowing hard. "We've got both scrolls, heaven and earth. Let's get the hell out of this forest before something worse happens." They patched themselves up as best they could and pressed onward through the labyrinth of trees. The final stretch to the tower was fraught with tension. Every rustle of leaves put them on edge, but they managed to avoid further confrontation. When they finally crossed the threshold into the tower's interior, relief flooded over them. They'd survived the forest of death. Inside, they found many teams had already arrived, including the Sand siblings, Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro, who looked disconcertingly unscathed. Naruto watched Gaara from across the room. The red-haired boy's eyes felt as cold as a distant planet, yet strangely, Naruto sensed a kinship, as though Gaara also housed a monstrous presence. He wondered if the other boys sensed the same in him. Soon, the proctors called for all surviving teams to gather in a massive hall. There, the third Hokage and a panel of Jonin greeted them, congratulating them on making it this far. Anko stood at the front, arms crossed, looking a bit disheveled but pleased. She explained that too many teams had passed, so a set of preliminaries would thin the herd. Each participant would have to fight in a one-on-one match. Winners moved on to the finals. Naruto's heart thumped, excitement coursing through him. This was it, a chance to showcase his strength to the entire village, to prove himself on a grand stage. But a nagging worry twisted in his stomach whenever his gaze drifted to Sasuke. The cursed seal still lingered, a dark bruise on Sasuke's skin, a grim reminder of Orochimaru's intentions. The first match was announced. Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato, a peculiar leaf genin with the ability to absorb chakra through physical contact. Sasuke, still weakened by the curse mark, stepped into the ring determined to fight without succumbing to that power again. Naruto and Sakura watched anxiously from the balcony. The clash began with Sasuke on the defensive, each blow leaving him wincing as Yoroi tried to sap what little chakra he had left. Sasuke grit his teeth, refusing to use the curse mark. He recalled Kakashi's training, that fleeting advice about copying Rock Lee's taijutsu style. Channeling that memory, he unleashed a lion combo in midair, slamming Yoroi into the ground with bone-jarring force. At the last second, black markings threatened to surge over Sasuke's flesh, but he held them back through sheer will. He managed to knock Yoroi unconscious without losing himself. Exhausted but victorious, Sasuke stood panting in the center of the ring. Kakashi quickly whisked him away for medical attention, leaving Naruto and Sakura to watch the rest of the preliminaries. One by one, battles played out on the floor below. Shino outsmarted Zaku, who still bore injuries from Sasuke's rampage. Kankuro bested an unfortunate rain ninja using his puppet. Temari easily dispatched Tenten, leaving the weapons specialist battered and frustrated. Neji overpowered Hinata in a tense Hyuga clan showdown that left Hinata collapsed, spitting blood but determined not to give up. Naruto clenched his fists at that, vowing to pay Neji back for humiliating Hinata. He realized he actually cared about her well-being more than he'd admitted to himself. Finally, Naruto's turn arrived. Naruto Uzumaki vs Kiba Inuzuka. The old classmates faced each other with tense smiles. Kiba, accompanied by Akamaru, cracked his knuckles in anticipation. Naruto bounced on the balls of his feet, adrenaline singing in his veins. He liked Kiba, but there was no room for mercy here, he had to win. The proctor signaled the start. Kiba lunged, fangs bared, Akamaru at his side. Naruto met him head-on with a burst of shadow clones, weaving among them to disorient Kiba. Yet Kiba's sharpened senses allowed him to pick out the real Naruto, knocking him off balance. Laughing confidently, Kiba unleashed his four legs technique, swirling in a flurry of claws. Naruto found himself forced on the defensive. "Come on, Naruto," Kiba taunted, leaping into the air. "You've gotten stronger, right? Show me what you've got." "Don't blame me for beating you too fast," Naruto retorted, forcing a grin. He could feel the flicker of wrath stirring, but he decided to call on a different approach. Use the cunning gleaned from pride, maybe even a hint of that mental clarity from Sloth. He needed to outsmart Kiba. He tossed down a smoke bomb, saturating the arena with a choking cloud. Kiba coughed, momentarily blinded. Taking advantage of the confusion, Naruto slipped behind him and slammed a spinning kick into Kiba's ribs. Kiba staggered, eyes watering. Akamaru tried to flank Naruto, but Naruto formed a sudden clone to tackle the ninkin aside. The audience watched, some with surprise. Naruto was fighting more strategically than usual. It quickly became a game of cat and mouse. Kiba, angered at being toyed with, channeled a soldier pill's energy with Akamaru, turning the dog into an identical copy of himself. Twin Kibas snarled, spinning into a vicious fang-over-fang attack. The double helix of swirling power tore through the arena floor, demolishing Naruto's clones. Naruto, pinned behind a broken pillar, clenched his teeth. He could sense the ferocity of that technique. He needed a big move, but not so big that he gave away his darkest secrets. An idea blossomed. He performed a transformation jutsu to disguise himself as Kiba's mother, Sume Inuzuka, copying the wild hairstyle and imposing presence. As the fang over fang came barreling at him, he shouted, "Kiba! Bad dog! Stop right there," in what he hoped was a convincing tone. Momentarily confused, Kiba hesitated, faltering mid-attack. That was all Naruto needed. He dropped the transformation, lunged forward, and slammed a perfectly timed uppercut into Kiba's chin. The blow rattled the Inuzuka boy, sending him toppling backward. Dazed, Kiba hit the ground. Akamaru, also stunned, yelped and reverted back to normal. The proctor glanced at Kiba, who couldn't rise, and declared Naruto the winner. Cheers and laughter erupted in the stands, some amused by Naruto's unorthodox tactics. Others whispered that he must have been holding back, given the rumors of his insane strength. Sakura exhaled a sigh of relief, a tiny smile gracing her lips. Hinata, watching from the medical area, felt a swell of admiration. Naruto saluted Kiba respectfully, then headed back to the balcony, trying to mask the throbbing ache in his muscles. He might be unbelievably powerful, but that fight was still taxing. His control was a work in progress. The last matches wrapped up. Gaara's victory was horrifyingly swift, his sand crushing his opponent in a brutal display. Rock Lee fought Gaara in a jaw-dropping taijutsu showdown. Lee's speed and dedication were inspiring, but in the end, Gaara's sand defenses proved too formidable. Lee was left gravely injured, his dreams momentarily crushed. Naruto couldn't help feeling uneasy watching Gaara's merciless expression. The boy's monstrous aura reminded him of the Nine Tails, only somehow darker. With the preliminaries concluded, the third Hokage congratulated the finalists and explained they'd have a month to prepare for the tournament round of the Chunin exams. Each finalist would face off in a bracket system. Naruto's match was slated against Neji Hyuga, an encounter that had him fired up. He glanced across the ring at Neji, who met his gaze impassively. Naruto vowed silently he would fight for Hinata's sacked genius wrong. At the announcement's end, the crowd dispersed. Some were collected by their Jonin senseis, others limped to the medical ward. Naruto headed off to find Kakashi, but was intercepted by an unexpected presence, Ebisu, the self-proclaimed elite tutor. Ebisu glared at Naruto, claiming that Kakashi was busy with Sasuke, so he'd been asked to supervise Naruto's training. "Hey, hold on," Naruto protested. "Kakashi-sensei knows I've got crazy chakra to handle. Who are you to step in?" Ebisu adjusted his glasses, sniffing disapprovingly. "I'm an elite trainer assigned by the Hokage himself. You, Naruto Uzumaki, are rumored to be more than just a troublemaker. I am to ensure you don't lose control of whatever you have inside you." Naruto bristled. He half expected ebony waves of wrath to surge, but curiously it was pride that rose to the forefront. He hated being treated like a problem child. Still, he bit back a retort. Maybe there was some sense in letting a specialized instructor watch him. He certainly needed better chakra control if he was going to rely on his new powers effectively. And so, despite serious reservations, he allowed Ebisu to lead him to a quiet training ground. Days passed. Between painfully dull lectures on chakra flow and repeated exercises like water walking, Naruto found himself itching to break out. He wanted real power training, to harness the 7 sins. But Ebisu was insistent, claiming fundamental control was paramount. Naruto's frustration boiled, culminating in a heated argument that left Ebisu flustered. One afternoon, as Naruto tried and failed to remain patient, he noticed a tall white-haired man peeping on the women's hot spring next door. Outraged, Ebisu tried to confront the pervert, only to be knocked unconscious with a comically swift strike. Naruto gawked. The man turned, revealing himself as Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, though Naruto didn't recognize him by sight. "What's your deal, kid?" Jiraiya asked, scratching his spiky hair, interrupting my research. "You knocked out my teacher," Naruto yelled. "Are you some kind of creep?" Jiraiya only shrugged lazily, giving Naruto an amused once-over. "I see. You're that nine-tails brat, aren't you? The talk of the village. And more, Interesting. You've got something extra swirling inside that stomach of yours." Naruto stiffened. What do you mean?" "Oh, just that I can sense chakra. And yours is quite a cocktail. Let me guess. You're looking for someone to teach you how to handle it." A spark of excitement flared in Naruto's chest. Maybe this weird old guy could actually help. "You got it. Teach me, then. My name's Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage. And I'm gonna beat some stuck-up Hyuga genius in a month's time, so I can't be messing around." Jiraiya smirked. "All right, kid. I could use an entertaining project. I can show you how to summon toads, tap into that monstrous chakra of yours, maybe even help you figure out that other weird presence in your system. But you do exactly as I say." Naruto nodded, ignoring the faint hint of lust in his chest that whispered he should be suspicious of a flamboyant old man so easily. He just wanted power, enough power to win. Enough to protect his friends, ensure no more tragedies like Haku or Lee's injuries. If it meant training under a perverted sage, so be it. Under Jiraiya's guidance, Naruto's days transformed into a relentless cycle of summoning practice, physical conditioning, and attempts at harnessing his swirling energies. Jiraiya quickly realized Naruto's chakra pool was far beyond normal, even ignoring the 9 tails. One evening, Jiraiya confronted him about it. "There's something else in there," Jiraiya said, leaning against a tree as Naruto collapsed from a grueling training session. "It's not the fox, and it's definitely not standard chakra. It flares in these weird surges, like a mix of different emotional frequencies." Naruto hesitated, remembering his nightmares about the 7 statues and the occasional pulses of wrath or pride. He wasn't ready to bear everything, but he confided in Jiraiya just enough. "I don't really know what it is either. Sometimes I feel super strong, or super confident, or I get this insane hunger to win. It's like I'm different people at once." Jiraiya stroked his chin. "Huh. That's heavy. Might be some ancient curse or blessing. Well, kid, I'm not sure how to handle that yet, but keep training. Controlling your chakra is step 1. Keep summoning, keep pushing your limits. If we can harness the fox's chakra properly, that might give us a clue about the other power." So Naruto trained, day in and day out, until his arms trembled and he could barely stand. In fleeting moments of exhaustion, he felt Sloth flood him, tempting him to sleep for days. At other times, the desire for greater strength fueled him like gluttony, driving him to keep going. He also discovered a subtle new trick. If he focused on pride, he could resist negative illusions and illusions more effectively. All these pieces of the puzzle teased his mind. He sensed there was an overarching secret behind it all, waiting to be discovered. As the final week of the month-long break ticked by, Naruto hit a wall. He struggled to summon anything beyond a tadpole. Anger threatened to overtake him. Jiraiya decided to force the matter, pushing Naruto off a cliff to jolt him into tapping the 9 tails. Terrified, Naruto plummeted, reflexively calling on every last speck of chakra. He felt an enormous wave of red-hot energy flood him. The fox's chakra roared, but so did the sins. In that swirling maelstrom, he caught a glimpse of something. A swirling ring of black flames, each flame a different color. Then, in a violent rush, a massive toad, Gamabunta, manifested beneath him, saving him from the fall. Exhausted and victorious, Naruto clung to Gamabunta's head, howling in triumph. Jiraiya cheered, though he looked pensive. "Kid's a real mystery," he muttered to himself. "I've never seen anything quite like those energies mixing. If he's not careful, they could tear him apart." But Naruto was too ecstatic to notice. He'd finally summoned a full-sized boss toad. He believed everything was coming together just in time for the finals. He pictured Neji's smug face, and the vow he'd made to Hinata. He pictured Sasuke, overshadowed by the curse mark. He pictured Sakura's concern and wanted to reassure her that he was strong enough. And yes, in the back of his mind, he remembered the vow he'd made to Haku. That he wouldn't let precious people die again. The month of training concluded in a rush. The day of the final matches dawned bright and full of promise. Crowds thronged the streets leading to the grand stadium. Merchants hawked food and trinkets, banners fluttered in the breeze. Naruto stood at the gates, heart-hammering with anticipation. He carried new power, new skills, and a still half-hidden darkness that lurked behind his grin. He made his way to the waiting area, scanning the sea of onlookers. He spotted his classmates, senseis, and even the visiting Kage, who gave Naruto a strangely assessing look. Gaara leaned against a pillar, lost in thought. Sasuke was absent, rumored to be training privately with Kakashi. The tension built with every passing moment. At last, the proctor Shikamaru had dubbed Old Proctor Guy, the ever-bored Hayate, called the participants to the arena floor. The bracket was set. Naruto would face Neji in the first match, followed by other notable pairs. The audience hushed as both shinobis stepped into the ring. Neji's pale eyes locked onto Naruto, brimming with quiet confidence. "Fate has already decided this match," he said softly. "You cannot escape destiny." Naruto's jaw clenched. He cracked his knuckles. "You talk like you know everything, but I've got my own destiny, and I'm about to prove you wrong." They stood still for a tense breath. Then the head through the air, signaling the start. In a flash, Neji opened with the classic Hyuga gentle fist stance, aiming to seal Naruto's chakra points. Naruto darted in, unleashing a cluster of shadow clones. Neji pivoted gracefully, striking each clone with precision. One by one, they puffed into smoke. Naruto grimaced. He needed to be unpredictable. Tapping into a faint swirl of pride, he forced calm into his thoughts and conjured more clones, this time fanning out to encircle Neji. At the same moment, he considered trying to channel wrath for a power boost, but worried that unleashing too much might cause an uncontrollable surge. Neji fired a palm strike that radiated chakra, hitting multiple clones at once. The ground shook with the impact. Naruto winced. He realized Neji's Byakugan gave him nearly 360 degrees of vision, making flanking nearly impossible. He had to force an opening. Gathering a swirl of red-orange chakra in his gut, he lunged forward. They clashed in a flurry of blows. Neji's strikes brushed Naruto's torso, severing some of his chakra flow. But Naruto hammered back with raw strength. For an instant, he caught Neji off guard, sending the Hyuga reeling. Blood spattered Neji's lip. A flicker of shock crossed his face. Naruto had far more power than before, more than any normal genin should. "You shouldn't have underestimated me," Naruto shouted, pressing the offensive. Neji stiffened, then spun in a perfect kaiden, a revolving sphere of chakra that knocked Naruto back. Pain lanced through Naruto's arms. Neji resumed his stance, breath uneven. "We're caged by fate. You, me, Hinata. We cannot escape our clan destinies." "Enough about fate," Naruto growled. Memories of Hinata lying in a pool of blood fueled him. That anger danced dangerously close to the wrath coiled inside. He was tempted to let it loose, to punish Neji for his arrogance. But he also recalled Haku's final words about protecting precious people. He needed control, not blind rage. Neji attacked again, weaving among Naruto's clones, precise strikes peppering Naruto's body. Naruto felt parts of his chakra forcibly sealed. His clones flickered out of existence. For a moment, it seemed he'd lost. The crowd murmured, and Neji raised his voice. "See? This is your fate." Naruto glared at him, sweat streaming down his brow. He pressed a trembling hand to his stomach, focusing on the swirl of energies. If the Nine Tails' power was blocked, maybe the sins could still lend him enough strength to push through. He took a ragged breath, then tried to will pride into his chakra points. pushing back against the Hyuga's seal. Something flickered. A faint purple glow lined his arms. Neji's eyes widened. What is that chakra? Naruto felt the seal marks on his torso recede ever so slightly. With a roar, he forced out a wave of raw energy, busting open enough chakra points to restore movement. Drawing on that momentum, he leapt forward. Neji attempted another kaiden, but Naruto darted low, scraping his knuckles on the dirt as he delivered a swift uppercut to Neji's torso. The Hyuga coughed, spittle flying as he staggered back. Naruto didn't give him time to recover. He formed a single shadow clone behind Neji, sweeping Neji's legs out from under him. Then the real Naruto slammed him down with a thunderous impact. The stadium rattled. For a moment, silence fell. Then the proctor stepped forward, glanced at Neji, unconscious, or at least unable to stand, and raised his hand. Winner. Naruto Uzumaki. Cheers erupted, some stunned, some elated. Naruto hunched, panting, the last traces of that mysterious chakra fading from his limbs. He turned to see Hinata watching from the balcony, tears of relief shining in her eyes. He gave her a small wave, and she bowed her head gratefully. The sense of victory filled him, not just for himself but for her. As medical Nin rushed to tend to Neji, Naruto limped out of the ring. He glimpsed the crowd. People who once dismissed him as a no-talent troublemaker now whispering in awe. He felt some of that pride again, but kept it in check. More matches followed. Shikamaru's cunning trap on Temari. Gaara's eerie display of sand manipulation. Tension spiraled, because Sasuke was still absent, fighting the clock to arrive on time. But even as the day wore on, the sense of dread Naruto felt regarding Orochimaru never left him. He remembered the serpent's parting words, how he took a keen interest in both Naruto and Sasuke. Something big was looming, overshadowing the finals themselves. Naruto perched on the stadium rails, ignoring the protest of his aching limbs. If a threat arose, if Orochimaru made a move, Naruto swore he'd be ready. Finally, Sasuke arrived, just in time, flanked by Kakashi. He stepped into the arena to face Gaara in a match the entire stadium anticipated. Naruto's nerves prickled as he watched from above. Sasuke carried a quiet intensity, the mark on his neck concealed under bandages, yet Naruto sensed that dangerous power might still lurk. Gaara, for his part, stood with a bored expression, waiting to unleash monstrous fury. Their battle roared to life in a spectacle of lightning-fast taijutsu and swirling sand. Sasuke used a technique reminiscent of Rock Lee's speed, landing a blow on Gaara's sand armor. The crowd gasped. Gaara's eyes flickered with a killing intent that chilled Naruto to the core. Then, halfway through the fight, the sky above the stadium darkened. Feathers seemed to drift in the air. An uneasy murmur swept through the audience. Suddenly, a genjutsu fell over the stadium. Spectators slumped in their seats, asleep. Shinobi from the hidden sound and sand attacked in a coordinated strike. Orochimaru, hidden in the guise of the Cage, seized the third Hokage. Chaos exploded in the stands. Leaf Ninja scrambled to fight back. Naruto leapt to his feet, heart pounding. This was no ordinary intrusion. This was an invasion. He scanned the arena. Sasuke vanished, chasing Gaara and his siblings. Kakashi barked orders for Naruto and Shikamaru to follow Sasuke. Sakura went to help the fallen civilians. The exam was all but forgotten as war erupted around them. Fire and smoke choked the air. Explosions shook the stands. High above, the third Hokage confronted Orochimaru on the rooftop of the cage box. The sky itself seemed to split as a massive barrier formed, sealing them in a deadly duel. Naruto felt panic, but also a burning resolve. He had to find Sasuke, had to prevent the worst from happening. Shikamaru. Naruto shouted, dragging the lazy genius along. Come on, we've got to back Sasuke up or he'll get himself killed. Shikamaru grumbled about how troublesome everything was, but followed. Together, they raced through the crumbling stadium walls, weaving around battling shinobi. Ino and Choji were busy fending off masked sound nin. Hinata was nowhere to be seen, but Naruto silently prayed she'd stay safe. They burst out onto the forested outskirts, glimpsing Sasuke in the distance, locked in pursuit of Gaara and his siblings. A wave of malicious chakra prickled the air, the kind Naruto recognized from the cursed seal. He grit his teeth, pushing himself faster. He felt pride, wrath, everything, churn inside. If Orochimaru's grand plan was to tear Konoha apart, Naruto intended to spoil it. This was no longer just an exam, it was open warfare, a test of his resolve, his hidden powers, and the bonds he'd fought so hard to protect. And as he charged after Sasuke, the promise he'd made, to grow strong enough to protect everyone, burned brighter than ever, fueling him in a haze of unstoppable determination. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of the tempest that would sweep through Konoha, reshaping alliances and igniting long-buried powers. The 7 deadly sins within him waited, coiled like serpents, ready to strike at the slightest provocation. And the destiny of Naruto Uzumaki, godlike vessel of these ancient forces, was about to be tested on a scale no one could have foreseen. Chaos Village hidden in the leaves. Explosions rattled the rooftops. Smoke plumed in angry columns across Konoha's skyline. Shinobi scrambled in every direction, some to fight invading sound and sand forces, others to usher civilians to safety. High above, a shimmering purple barrier enclosed the Hokage and Orochimaru in a private, deadly confrontation. The third Hokage's figure was visible only as a distant silhouette, locked in battle with his one-time disciple. Naruto Uzumaki sprinted through ruined corridors, rubble crunching beneath his sandals. Beside him, Shikamaru scowled, muttering that this was all so troublesome, but nevertheless keeping pace. They'd left the half-destroyed stadium behind, chasing after Sasuke, who'd rushed off to confront Gaara. In the flickering light of distant fires, Naruto could just make out Sasuke's trail through the forest surrounding Konoha. His heart pounded. He remembered the weird aura clinging to Gaara, something monstrous that rivaled even the 9 tails. Or maybe more. He could practically feel the malevolence lurking at the edge of the village. Naruto's paw, he vaulted over a collapsed wall, ignoring the stench of burning wood and the screams echoing in the distance. Every fiber of his being told him to hurry. Sasuke would get himself killed going one-on-one against Gaara if that freakish sand power was half as deadly as it had seemed in the prelims. And now, with the invasion erupting, no one was around to save him. Naruto clenched his fists. He refused to let the sins, those strange powers boiling under his skin, distract him. He needed to keep a cool head and rescue Sasuke, plain and simple. At the edge of the trees, he skidded to a stop. Shikamaru halted beside him, eyes darting warily. Just ahead, a swirl of sand crept across the ground, coiling around uprooted foliage. Gaara stood in a small clearing, his siblings Temari and Kankuro flanking him protectively. The gourd on Gaara's back dripped streams of living sand that curled and twisted, as though tasting the air. A short distance away, Sasuke leaned against a trunk, panting. One hand flickered with crackling lightning, the Chidori he'd recently learned. "Stay back," Sasuke hissed at Naruto, though his voice lacked its usual venom. His eyes never left Gaara. "This is my fight." "Sasuke, you idiot," Naruto snapped. "You saw what he did in the stadium. He's not normal. I'm not letting you do this alone." Temari noticed them and tensed, readying her fan. Kankuro's puppet scuttled forward, claws clicking ominously. Gaara barely moved, his eyes fixed on Sasuke. A swirl of energy radiated from him, unsettled, angry, ready to snap. A hush fell. Even the nearby birds ceased their calls, as if recognizing the presence of a predator. Sasuke charged first, lightning gathering in his hand. The Chidori's shriek split the air. Gaara's sand rose in a barrier, absorbing the brunt of the blow. Sparks flew. Sand hissed, spattering across the ground in muddy clumps. Gaara hissed in pain, his eyes going wide. A single rivulet of blood trickled from beneath the sand shell. Shock rippled across his features. He'd never truly been wounded before. That singular wound seemed to unhinge him further. A growl tore from Gaara's throat. The sand around him thrashed and expanded, forming grotesque shapes. A tail, a claw, each one shaped from malevolent chakra-laced grains. Naruto's breath hitched. The swirling aura reminded him of a Bijuu's presence. If Gaara housed another tailed beast, this confrontation could blow up in ways Konoha was not ready for. Shikamaru exhaled. "This is insane. We can't win if that guy fully transforms into whatever he's got inside him." "Well, we're about to find out," Naruto retorted, forcing confidence into his voice. A faint flicker of wrath rippled under his skin, begging him to unleash it. He steadied himself. He wouldn't lose control. Not here. Your blood will make me feel alive, Gaara snarled, voice echoing unnaturally. More sand spouted from his gourd, spiraling into a half-formed demon shape. Temari and Kankuro exchanged fearful glances and leapt backward, giving their brother space. Even they seemed unsettled by Gaara's intensity. Sasuke tried another Chidori, but the strain of using that technique multiple times in quick succession left him pale and trembling. This time, Gaara's sand knocked him aside with brutal force. Sasuke crashed against the ground, gasping for breath. Naruto saw the pain in Sasuke's eyes. The cursed seal on his neck pulsed, as though daring him to draw on its power. Damn it, Sasuke spat, struggling to rise. I can't lose here, not to you. Naruto's gut twisted. He didn't like seeing Sasuke so desperate. His rival was dangerously close to giving in to Orochimaru's mark. Without hesitation, Naruto dashed forward, creating a flurry of shadow clones to divert Gaara's monstrous sand. He needed to keep Gaara's attention away from Sasuke until he could figure out a plan. Shikamaru's paw from behind a fallen log. Shikamaru watched Naruto rush headlong into danger. It was typical, but also different. Naruto's moves were sharper, more deliberate. Shikamaru had noticed it during the prelims. No longer was Naruto the blundering loudmouth. He was still loud, sure, but there was an edge of calculation there now. Shikamaru attributed it to some hidden well of power or raw determination, or maybe both. Trouble was, Gaara looked unstoppable. Each strike from Naruto's clones was obliterated by a swirling sand claw, flinging them like rag dolls. Shikamaru's mind raced. If Gaara fully transformed, they were done for. That meant stopping him now, or at least forcing him unconscious. But how to get through all that sand? He scanned the clearing, eyes narrowing. He spotted a vantage point atop a large boulder. If he could use shadow possession jutsu from there, pin Gaara even for a second, maybe Naruto or Sasuke could deal a decisive blow. But then his gaze landed on the siblings, Temari and Kankuro, who definitely wouldn't stand around idle. Shikamaru cursed under his breath. We need a bigger distraction. Something they won't see coming. Naruto's paw of Naruto's clones surrounded Gaara in a wide arc. He engaged with a flurry of punches and kicks, but each time the sand reared up to block him, swirling in jagged shapes reminiscent of jaws or spikes. A chunk of earthen teeth slashed across Naruto's shoulder, drawing blood. He gritted his teeth, pain hot against his skin. Yet strangely, the sting galvanized him, fueling that lethal wrath. No, keep calm. He reminded himself that unleashing wrath might cause too much collateral damage. He pictured the forest around them, the unconscious civilians back in the stadium, Sasuke's battered form. He had to keep his mind clear. He felt his chakra churn. Maybe a smidge of pride, enough to remain collected, might help. All at once, Gaara roared. The sand shaped itself into a hulking partial form of the one tail, Shukaku. A grotesque arm stretched forward, aiming to crush Naruto. He barely ducked aside. The earth shook under the impact. Each breath Naruto took rasped in his chest. He needed a finishing move, something to break through Gaara's defenses. Summoning jutsu. If he could muster enough chakra for Gamabunta, that might tip the scales. But the last time he'd summoned the big toad, he'd been half-conscious from exhaustion. Before he could decide, Sasuke staggered to his feet nearby, eyes brimming with defiance. Lightning began to spark around his hand once more. A third Chidori. Naruto realized with alarm that using it again might permanently damage Sasuke's body, but Sasuke seemed beyond caring. Sasuke glanced at Naruto, panting. Cover me, one last shot. Naruto nodded. Fine. Don't die, idiot. Sasuke's paw. Agony spiked through Sasuke's arm. His chakra reserves were nearly empty, and the cursed seal itched, whispering that it could give him all the power he needed if he just let off. No, he wouldn't rely on Orochimaru's vile gift. He wanted his own strength, not a borrowed curse. He felt Naruto's presence at his back, a blazing reassurance. The Dobi, as he used to call him, was different now. Stronger, more cunning. Sasuke hated how part of him felt overshadowed, but he also respected it, and that spurred him on. Focusing the last of his energy, he shaped the Chidori. The sound of 1,000 birds sang in his ears, drowning out the roar of Gaara's shifting sand. He sprinted, dodging the monstrous claw that smashed down again. Then he saw an opening. Gaara had extended too far forward. Sasuke angled in, surging with lightning, aiming for Gaara's chest. At the final moment, sand thickened around Gaara's body, forming an even denser shell. Sasuke's Chidori pierced partway in. The shell cracked but didn't shatter. Gaara howled, half in pain, half in rage. In a terrifying ripple, the sand expanded, slamming Sasuke back. He flew a dozen yards and crashed, the Chidori flickering out. Darkness crowded his vision. Naruto's pav. Sasuke. Naruto hollered, seeing him go down. That was enough. He felt rage boiling, wrath surging in tandem with the Nine Tails chakra. But he couldn't let it devour him. Instead, he let just enough bleed out, flooding his muscles with demonic strength. Red chakra flared around his body, a roiling aura that crackled over his skin. Gaara's monstrous sand form scuttled forward like a giant raccoon beast in miniature. Fierce chakra radiated from him, tearing the forest floor. Naruto formed a shadow clone, each of them weaving signs. This time, he'd try the summoning jutsu. He slammed his hand down, blood from his cut shoulder smearing the sealing script on his palm. A plume of smoke erupted, and out came Gamakichi, a smaller toad, blinking in confusion. Naruto grimaced. "Oh, come on," Gamakichi croaked indignantly. "Hey, that's rude, you know." Before Naruto could respond, Gaara roared, launching a torrent of sand. Thinking quickly, Naruto grabbed the little toad and leapt, narrowly evading the attack. Splinters of bark pelted them as the sand sheared through nearby trees. He set Gamakichi aside. "Sorry, but this is life or death. Hide for now." Naruto's frustration spiked. If he couldn't get Gamabunta, he'd have to rely on raw strength and cunning. Summoning that bigger toad required more chakra, which might mean letting more of the Nine Tails power surface. Could he risk that? The swirling presence of the Seven Sins tugged at him, each emotion competing for dominance. Pride hissed that he could do this alone. Wrath urged him to unleash unstoppable fury. Greed insisted he should want more power, more raw might. Sloth warned him not to overextend. Envy reminded him that Sasuke's power was overshadowing him in everyone's eyes. Lust, well, that was a tangled swirl of wanting recognition, wanting to protect, and more. Through it all, Naruto forced himself to focus. He inhaled deeply. "I won't lose," he whispered. "Not to you, Gaara, or to the monster inside you." Gaara's paw of everything hurt. He stared at his cracked sand armor, blood trickling across his chest. This was new. The pain was almost intoxicating. Inside, the voice of Shukaku snarled, urging him to destroy everything. Gaara's heartbeat thundered. He wanted to feel alive, to validate his existence by killing these leaf shinobi. The red chakra swirling around Naruto intrigued him. That power reeked of another Biju. Gaara wanted to break it, to prove he was superior. He sank deeper into his monstrous shell, the partial transformation creeping closer to a full Shukaku release. The trees around him trembled. "Mother," he whispered, "I'll feed you their blood. Then, I'll be safe. I'll matter." Naruto's figure blurred, suddenly appearing right in front of him with a swirling mass of chakra in hand. It wasn't the Rasengan. He hadn't learned that yet, but rather a coalesced ball of Nine Tails laced energy. Gaara's eyes flared. He retaliated, sending a sandclaw to crush Naruto's torso. Back to Naruto. Naruto met the strike head-on. His improvised attack, fueled by the demon fox's chakra, smashed into the sandclaw. The collision detonated a shockwave that knocked everyone off their feet. Trees groaned and uprooted. Sand flew in every direction. Naruto felt his body ache from the feedback, yet he stood firm, determined not to let Gaara move any closer to Sasuke. When the dust settled, Gaara's partial demon form was even more twisted. He coughed, eyes wild. Then, with a guttural snarl, he lurched backward, weaving hand signs. "I won't lose my existence." Naruto recognized the energy shift. Gaara was about to fully unleash the One Tail. Panic strangled him. If that beast manifested here, half the village outskirts could be destroyed. He had to finish this now. He poured more chakra into his next move, ignoring the warning burn in his coils. A swirl of crimson glowed at his fingertips. Without consciously meaning to, he tapped deeper into the 7 sins as well. Pride gave him unwavering focus. Wrath gave him raw strength, and something else, greed, maybe, lent him a fierce desire to seize victory. The mixture felt volatile, but he had no choice. He dashed forward in a blur. Gaara's eyes widened. The monstrous Shukaku visage roared, but Naruto was already inside its reach. Delivering a savage punch, Naruto shattered part of Gaara's sandy torso. With the second strike, he slammed Gaara's real body back, sending him crashing through the clearing. A pained gasp escaped Gaara's lips. He tumbled to the ground, the monstrous sand appendages dissolving around him. It looked like he'd been forced out of the transformation mid-process. Naruto, panting, battered, limped closer. He prepared one last blow, though his limbs shook with exhaustion. Gaara glared up, fear flickering in his eyes for the first time. Naruto froze, remembering the swirl of confusion and pain on Haku's face, that moment when the line between enemy and victim blurred. Gaara's entire existence was shaped by the demon within him, just like Naruto's. "Why?" Gaara rasped, trembling. "Why fight so hard for them? Why do you risk your life for anyone but yourself?" Naruto grit his teeth. He thought of Haku's final words, of how the boy had fought to protect Zabuza. He remembered the vow he made to himself to never let people he cared about die. The swirling power inside him, the 7 sins, threatened to consume him if he let them overshadow what truly mattered, his bonds. "Because they saved me from being alone," Naruto said hoarsely. "I won't let anyone take that away from me, no matter what monster is inside me, or inside you." Gaara's sand twitched, half rising in a weak defense. But the fight had gone out of him. Naruto exhaled, letting the red aura recede. For a moment, he felt relief flood him. Gaara lay there, dazed, grappling with new emotions he'd never acknowledged before. Temari and Kankuro hurried over, uncertain whether to retaliate or retreat. But seeing Gaara incapacitated, they chose to escape, hoisting him away. Naruto, too tired to chase them, sank to his knees. He looked back and saw Sasuke propped against a tree, half conscious. Shikamaru stepped out from behind the boulder, releasing a breath he'd held far too long. They'd survived. Back in the heart of Konoha, the purple barrier flickered. From afar, Naruto glimpsed it collapse into motes of energy. He didn't know the details yet, but he sensed something catastrophic in the air. A profound sorrow spreading across the village. He caught Shikamaru's grim expression. "I've got a bad feeling about this," Shikamaru muttered. Naruto steeled himself, pushing to his feet. "Then let's see what happened." They made their way back into Konoha's ruins, ignoring the screams of fleeing invaders and the triumphant war cries of Leaf Shinobi pushing the attackers out. Debris littered the streets. Collapsed walls and shattered when intense battle. A thick smoke haze clung to the air, stinging Naruto's eyes. At the base of the Hokage residence, shinobi gathered in somber clusters. Whispers of, "The third is gone," rippled through the crowd. Naruto's chest constricted. He pushed past the onlookers, ignoring how battered and bloody he appeared, until he reached the courtyard. There, he saw the third Hokage's body, carefully laid on a cloth, with a circle of Jonin kneeling in respect. Kakashi was among them, mask partially torn, expression hollow. Sakura stood nearby, tears streaking her cheeks. Even the ever-stoic Yamato, just one of many Jonin, though not deeply introduced in canon at this point, looked shaken. Lord Third's face was peaceful in death, though the price had been high. Orochimaru had fled, wounded, his arms cursed by the Reaper death seal. But the man who had led Konoha for so long was gone. Naruto's throat tightened. The sins churned inside him, each reacting differently to grief. Wrath wanted vengeance against Orochimaru. Envy and pride were overshadowed by a sense of despair. Sloth threatened to drag him into numbness. He knelt beside Sakura, who looked at him, eyes red. "Sakura," Naruto managed softly, "are you all right?" She nodded, wiping her face. "Naruto, Sasuke's being taken to the hospital. Kakashi-sensei said you should get medical attention too." Naruto opened his mouth to protest, but then noticed his own blood-soaked sleeve. Weariness crashed over him. The adrenaline that had carried him thus far drained away, leaving him shaky. Through the haze, he glimpsed Hinata approaching. She looked alarmed, tears brimming, but when she saw Naruto was conscious, Relief flooded her features. In that moment, Naruto realized how many people truly cared. He also felt a pang of guilt for how powerless he'd been to stop the greatest tragedy today. The third Hokage had sacrificed himself, and Naruto couldn't prevent it. In the days that followed, the village mourned. Black funeral drapes hung from building eaves. Ninja and civilians alike gathered for a solemn service honoring the Hokage. Naruto stood among the crowds, bandages peeking out from beneath his jacket. He watched as the coffin was laid to rest, trying to process the swirl of emotions. Sakura's paw, she glanced at Naruto, who stood quietly, face set in hard lines she'd never seen before. Something about him had shifted. He didn't cry openly, he almost seemed too stunned for tears. Sakura herself felt a constant ache in her chest. She recalled how Lord Third had been kind and supportive to Naruto in particular, the boy who used to be scorned by so many. Sasuke was absent, confined to the hospital. They said he was recovering physically, but there was a new darkness in him. She worried. She caught glimpses of Naruto sparing a concerned look toward the hospital. Maybe he worried too. She shook off her thoughts and returned her attention to the memorial. Naruto's paw, he listened to the funeral speeches. Elders praising the Third's wisdom and sacrifice. Jonin recalling moments of guidance. The emptiness weighed on him. A small part of him wanted to lash out in anger. Wrath, boiling just beneath the surface. Another part of him wanted to collapse in sorrow. Instead, he kept silent, determined to bear this pain. Across the courtyard, Hinata hovered, as if wanting to approach him but uncertain if now was the right time. Ino stood near Shikamaru and Choji. Tenten and Lee paid their respects as well. Naruto realized with a jolt that many of the kunoichi were watching him, concerned. They'd seen his growing power, his unwavering determination. He felt something shift. Like the start of new bonds forming. Even Sakura, who'd spent so long fixated on Sasuke, seemed to be re-evaluating her feelings. Yet Naruto didn't dwell on that. He only thought about what came next. Orochimaru remained at large, and the Leaf Village was weakened. Gaara and his siblings had left, but they'd be back if the Sand and Sound Alliance persisted. And somewhere in all this, the question of Naruto's own power, of the Seven Sins, loomed. Days turned into a week. The village began its slow rebuild. Shinobi teams worked round the clock repairing infrastructure and patrolling for lingering enemies. Tsunade's name came up as a potential fifth Hokage. Rumors spread that Jiraiya would venture out to find her. Meanwhile, Naruto found himself called to a private meeting with the village council, who seemed extremely interested in the strange chakra signatures he'd displayed. He stood in a small chamber within the Hokage Tower, facing a line of stern-faced elders. Homura, Kaharu, and a silent Danzo, who eyed Naruto with a calculating gaze. Jiraiya, arms folded, was there as well, acting as Naruto's advocate. Uzumaki Naruto, Kaharu said sternly, "We have reports that you demonstrated unusual powers beyond the nine-tailed fox's chakra during the invasion. Is that correct?" Naruto felt a muscle twitch in his jaw. Yeah, I don't fully understand it myself." Homura tapped a scroll. "We suspect these abilities could be detrimental if left unchecked. We must ensure you are not a threat to the village." Danzo's single eye narrowed. "If the boy cannot control these powers, we will need to." Jiraiya cut him off, voice sharp. "Let's not jump to that. Naruto's still a kid, and a loyal Leaf Shinobi. Whatever is inside him, we can teach him to harness it properly." Naruto exhaled, grateful for Jiraiya's support. Still, the question of how to control the sins weighed heavily. He knew these elders might consider him a dangerous weapon. He didn't want to be used or sealed away. Summoning courage, he spoke firmly. "I'll learn to control it. I won't hurt the village. Believe it." The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Homura nodded slightly. "Very well. For now, we accept Jiraiya's assurances. But bear in mind, Uzumaki Naruto, we will be watching." Naruto bowed stiffly, heading out of the chamber with Jiraiya. Outside, in the corridor, the old sage ruffled Naruto's hair. "Don't mind them too much, kid. They're scared. This is a time of crisis." Naruto sighed. "I understand, but I hate feeling like they don't trust me. Lord Third always believed in me." Jiraiya's face softened. "I know. We'll find a way to master your powers, maybe after we track down Tsunade. She can probably help with sealing knowledge. In the meantime, Keep your chin up. You did good saving Sasuke and fending off Gaara. A flicker of pride rose in Naruto's chest at that. Yeah, well, Sasuke would have died without me. Then his voice dropped. But the third, I couldn't. Jiraiya sighed. Orochimaru outmaneuvered us all. Sarutobi sensei took him down at great cost. We honor his memory by moving forward, you got that? Naruto nodded, eyes shining with fresh determination. Hospital ward Sasuke glared out the window, refusing to meet Sakura's gaze. She brought flowers. Naruto's idea, apparently. His cursed seal still twinged. He felt weaker than he liked. Outside, he heard rumors of Naruto's heroics, how he'd stood toe-to-toe with Gaara and won. The realization stoked an ugly envy in Sasuke's gut. Once again, Naruto was surging ahead while he remained trapped in a hospital bed. Sakura spoke softly. The doctors say you'll be okay. You just need rest. Naruto's worried about you. Sasuke closed his eyes. Naruto, the Dobi. How can he be so strong? Sakura's lips pressed into a thin line. He just found a reason to fight, I guess. He wants to protect everyone. That's what he said. Bitterness flickered across Sasuke's features. Protect. The Uchiha clan was gone. He wanted power to avenge them, to kill Itachi. He wanted to surpass Naruto, to prove he wasn't weak. Glancing at Sakura's concern, he felt a twinge of guilt. He barely acknowledged her, even though she'd stayed by his side. A part of him wondered why Naruto's unstoppable spirit him differently these days. He turned away, muttering, "Tell him I'll beat him next time." Naruto's apartment late at night. Naruto lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The day's exhaustion made his limbs heavy, but his mind refused to settle. Thoughts spun about Orochimaru, the sins, Gaara, Sasuke, and the third's funeral. The hush of the crowd as the coffin was lowered. He grit his teeth. He'd used wrath, pride, even glimmers of greed in battle. They'd saved him, but they might have destroyed him if he lost control. In the gloom, he imagined the 7 pillars from his recurring dream, each carved with a monstrous visage. He recalled the ancient, echoing voice telling him he was chosen to bear their power. That dream no longer felt distant, it felt like his reality. "I'll figure this out," he whispered to no one. "I'll protect what matters, that's a promise." A faint swirl of chakra tugged at his senses, almost reassuring, as though the sins responded to his vow. They were part of him now, for better or worse, and if mastering them was the key to defending his friends and his village, so be it. Epilogue for Chapter 3. Morning light crept across the battered rooftops of Konoha. The rebuilding efforts had only begun, but the Leaf's resilient spirit refused to die. Naruto rose early, ignoring the soreness in his body, and headed out. He had training to do, especially if rumors were true that Jiraiya would soon take him on a journey to find Tsunade. Perhaps along the way, he'd unearth more clues about these 7 deadly sins. Hinata caught sight of him from down the street, blush creeping into her cheeks as she summoned the courage to approach. At the same moment, Ino waved at him from her family's flower shop, while Tenten passed by on her way to the training grounds. Sakura, bustling with supplies for the reconstruction, paused to exchange a nod with him. Despite his grief, Naruto felt a warm, fluttering sense of connection to these girls who had begun to gravitate toward him in subtle ways. Some out of gratitude, others out of admiration. He had no time to dwell on the complexities of affection or romance right now, but the seeds of a new closeness were undeniably sprouting. Perhaps that was another kind of power he possessed. The ability to draw people in, to inspire loyalty and affection. As he dashed through the village, he caught a glimpse of the ruined Hokage monument, the third's face scorched by flame and rubble. His chest tightened, but he forced a grin. "Don't worry, old man," he murmured under his breath. "I'll become Hokage one day. And I'll make sure this place is safe. I swear it." With that pledge, Naruto Uzumaki, vessel of the 9 tails and bearer of the 7 deadly sins, steeled himself for the next phase of his journey. The invasion had claimed many lives and left deep scars, but he refused to let despair take root. A new chapter lay ahead, full of perils and revelations that would test every bond he cherished and every power he wielded. He was ready to face it all. Chapter 4. The Retrieval and Resolve. Smoke still clung to parts of Konoha weeks after the invasion. Scaffolding lined broken walls, and shinobi bustled at every corner, rebuilding roads and rooftops. The village carried on, resilient as ever, but a hush lingered. Everyone felt the absence of the third Hokage. Into this uneasy calm stepped Tsunade, newly convinced by Jiraiya to assume the mantle of fifth Hokage. Her arrival heralded a spark of hope and healing, both literally and figuratively. Yet beneath the surface, fresh conflicts brewed. A new Hokage, a renewed rivalry. Tsunade wasted no time settling in. She made it clear. The leaf would recover at double speed, and no threat, be it Orochimaru or any lingering sound affiliates, would be allowed to fester. She tended personally to critical injuries at the hospital, including Rock Lee and Sasuke Uchiha. For Naruto, battered from his fight with Gaara and still wrestling with the hidden powers of the Seven Sins, she devised specialized checkups to ensure the nine-tailed seal remained stable. More than once, she raised an eyebrow at the swirl of conflicting chakra within him, though she said little. Naruto sensed she wanted to unravel that secret in time, but for now, the daily chaos of running a half-ruined village took priority. The first big shake-up came when Sasuke, newly healed, squared off with Naruto in the training grounds. He was frustrated, furious, even after learning how Naruto had defeated Gaara without relying on some borrowed curse. It stung Sasuke's pride that the former, dead last, was pulling ahead again. The two traded harsh words in a drizzling afternoon, training dummies scattered around them. Sakura showed up right as the tension peaked. Sasuke ignited his Chidori, crackling lightning shaping around his palm. Naruto's eyes flared with an answering red, the Kyuubi's energy licking around his fists. Plus that intangible undercurrent of the sins. Their clash radiated across the clearing, forcing Sakura to shout for them to stop. Both boys snapped out of it just before landing blows that could have caused real damage. But in that charged second, Sasuke realized how far Naruto's powers had grown. Something dark stirred in his expression. He turned away, leaving the training grounds in silence. Sakura stared after him, tears threatening. Naruto exhaled, fists still trembling, a swirl of pride and wrath snapping at his thoughts. He forced himself calm. He couldn't lose control, especially not around a friend, even one as volatile as Sasuke. Shadows of Orochimaru behind the scenes, sound ninja agents scurried like rats in the rubble. Orochimaru, crippled by the Reaper Death Seal Sarutobi had cast, hungered for a new host body. Word spread that he had eyes on Sasuke's Sharingan. Whispers about the sound 4 elite bodyguards to Orochimaru surfaced among Anbu reports. Tsunade quietly marshaled her forces, determined to hunt down any infiltration. Yet no one expected Sasuke himself to willingly seek Orochimaru out. That changed on a crisp evening when Sakura, having just finished a shift at the hospital, spotted Sasuke at the village gates. A strange quartet of shinobi, each exuding eerie chakra, waited outside. Desperate, Sakura sprinted to confront Sasuke. He turned, expression hidden under shadow. "I have to get stronger," he said coldly. "Stronger than Naruto. Strong enough to kill my brother. Orochimaru can give me that power. Konoha can't." Terror lanced through Sakura. She begged him to stay, tears spilling. But Sasuke only murmured thanks for all she'd done, then knocked her unconscious with a swift strike. By the time she woke in the lamplight, he was gone. News of Sasuke's defection spread by dawn. A hush fell on the village, shock, then anger. Tsunade wasted no time. She summoned a retrieval squad, fronted by Shikamaru as the lone new Chunin. Naruto, of course, demanded to join. He refused to let Sasuke vanish into Orochimaru's clutches. Backing them would be Kiba, Neji, and Choji. The mission: intercept Sasuke before he crossed the border and bring him home alive. Formation of the retrieval squad. They met outside the gate. Shikamaru, yawning, scanned the group. Kiba crouched beside Akamaru, nose-twitching for a scent. Choji stuffed the last bit of a snack into his mouth, anxious but determined. Neji said little, only that the Byakugan would ensure no enemy escaped his gaze. Naruto cracked his knuckles, trying to mask how personal this was for him. Sakura arrived, not as part of the combat unit but to send them off, tears in her eyes. She pleaded with Naruto. "Bring Sasuke back." "I promise," Naruto said, voice firm. He flashed her a confident grin that, beneath the surface, trembled with worry. Hinata lingered a short distance away, hands pressed together. Her pale eyes brimmed with concern for Naruto's safety. He offered her a brief, reassuring nod. With that, the squad raced out of the village, following reports of Sasuke's last known path, the deep into forested terrain. Before long, Kiba picked up the trail, alongside distinct tracks from 4 unknown shinobi. The sound 4, no doubt. The battles begin. Hirobo's trap. They encountered the first obstacle by midday. The squad found themselves abruptly ensnared in a massive earth dome shaped by Jirobo, a hulking sound shinobi known for absorbing chakra. Rock walls closed in on them, the air suffocating. Shikamaru, analyzing the barrier, deduced the group had to split up. While some battered at the dome, others would distract Jirobo from the outside. But Jirobo was cunning. Each time they tried to break free, he siphoned chakra. Frustration mounted. Naruto felt wrath licking the edges of his mind, urging him to tear through the walls with raw force. But Shikamaru insisted they strategize. Eventually, they coordinated a ruse. Choji stayed behind to fight Jirobo alone. His personal decision, fueled by a quiet resolve to protect his friends. The rest broke free in a frantic burst of collaboration. Neji spinning in Kaden to weaken the dome. Naruto summoning a swirl of clones to distract Jirobo. Kiba and Shikamaru slashing a gap in the wall. As they slipped out, Choji stayed behind, popping soldier pills to amplify his strength. Choji's voice echoed softly through the breach. "Go on without me. I'll catch up." Naruto's heart clenched. He recognized that self-sacrifice, but there was no time to argue. Sasuke's trail awaited them. A furious bellow from Jirobo and the thunder of Choji's expansion jutsu rumbled behind them as they sprinted onward. Neji's stand. Kidomaru's web. The next ambush came from above. Kidomaru, the spider-like sound ninja, rained arrow-like projectiles while weaving sticky webbing. The group scattered, leaps carrying them through dense underbrush. Kidomaru targeted Neji, recognizing the Hyuga's eyes as the biggest threat. A hail of golden webs pinned Naruto and Kiba briefly, tangling them in place, until Neji cut them free with gentle fist precision. In the chaos, Shikamaru realized they'd never catch Sasuke if they kept getting bogged down. Neji insisted on handling Kidomaru alone, pointing out that his Byakugan could see the web's weak points. Naruto protested, but Neji's calm conviction was unyielding. "You gave me a reason to change," Neji said quietly to Naruto. "During our battle, you showed me fate can be defied. I won't lose, now go." Gritting his teeth, Naruto nodded. A flurry of parted leaves and the group hurried on, leaving Neji behind to duel the spider nin. Each step away felt heavier, but time pressed them to move. Tunnel of Vengeance. Saken and Ukon, now only Shikamaru, Naruto, and Kiba, with Akamaru, remained on the direct route. As they surged forward, they came face to face with Saken and Yukon. Siamese twin shinobi fused in one body, their chakra lethal and bizarre. The confrontation erupted in a swirl of fists, blades, and ninjutsu. Saken singled out Naruto, mocking him. "We heard you're special. Orochimaru-sama might like to toy with you too." Naruto's rage flared. The mention of Orochimaru hammered at his self-control, summoning an undercurrent of wrath. But Shikamaru halted him. They had to think. Saken and Yukon's regeneration and double-teaming style tore through normal tactics. Eventually, Shikamaru pinned one with shadow possession, but the other half emerged from the pinned body, blindsiding them. It became clear. Splitting them up might be the only option. Kiba took that moment to unleash a desperate move with Akamaru, transforming themselves into twin wolf-like beasts. "I'll hold them here," he barked. "Go on, Shikamaru. Naruto, get Sasuke." Naruto's stomach knotted. Leaving friends to fight alone kept cutting deeper, but each of them stepped forward willingly, trusting Naruto's unstoppable drive to bring Sasuke back. Without a second thought, Naruto turned, forging ahead with Shikamaru. Behind them, Kiba let out a fierce snarl and lunged at Saken, Yukon, while Shikamaru tried to tip the odds with last-minute support. Then Shikamaru dragged Naruto onward. The mission demanded they keep moving. Shikamaru versus Tayuya, and a new ally before long, they crossed an eerie clearing filled with gnarled trees. A haunting flute melody rose from the shadows. Tayuya, the foul-mouthed kunoichi of the Sound 4, stepped out, smirking. End of the line, leaf scum. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered, recognizing the genjutsu-laced tune. He turned to Naruto. You go. She'll keep us pinned here forever if we both stay. I can handle her illusions. Naruto hesitated. But, no time, Shikamaru snapped. Sasuke's close. Go. Naruto clenched his jaw, then dashed away. Leaves swirled in his wake. He heard Tayuya snarl an insult, fluting faster. Shikamaru responded with shadow sowing, the hum of chakra slicing through the air. That was the last Naruto saw as he leapt through the clearing, heart pounding. He hoped Shikamaru's brilliance would see him through. No more blockers. No more squads. Only Naruto racing after Sasuke. If he failed, everything his friends sacrificed would mean nothing. The forest thinned, the sky brightened, and he spotted a figure on a rocky path. Sasuke. But the boy stood with his back turned, a swirling aura of gloom around him. Naruto felt relief flood him, but it was short-lived. Another presence loomed. Kimimaro, a pale, stoic shinobi with bones for weapons, Orochimaru's last line of defense. Kimimaro moved with elegant lethality, stepping in front of Sasuke as if to shield him from Naruto's attempts to reason. He's chosen his path, Kimimaro said coolly. Naruto ready to kunai, mind screaming that he was almost out of time. Sasuke said nothing, face turned away. Then, the unexpected happened. Rock Lee, bandaged from head to toe yet awake and determined, bounded into the scene. Naruto. I will handle this foe, he declared, ignoring how fresh his injuries were. Tsunade's healing must have let him move, but just barely. Kimimaro calmly engaged Lee in a flurry of bone-bladed strikes. Naruto, with a last look of gratitude, sprinted for Sasuke. He found only an empty space. Sasuke had bolted deeper into a canyon dotted with waterfalls. Naruto cursed, gave chase, and swore he'd bring him back even if he had to break every bone in his body. Valley of the End. Clash of friends at the final edge of Fire Country stood the Valley of the End, two colossal statues facing each other across a roaring waterfall. Hashirama and Madara. Legends from the past. On one statue's head stood Sasuke, wind whipping around him. On the opposite stood Naruto. They regarded each other over the thunder of water. You really left, Naruto called, voice echoing over the canyon. Orochimaru's a monster. Don't you remember what happened to the third Hokage? Why would you hand yourself over? Sasuke's eyes, spinning with the Sharingan, locked onto Naruto. I have no choice if I'm to surpass you, and kill Itachi. I don't care what happens to me. He paused, bitterness lacing his tone. You'll never understand this hatred. Naruto's chest clenched. He thought of losing the third, of losing Haku. He thought of how his entire childhood had been shaped by loneliness. Maybe I don't understand your exact pain, he said, but I know what it's like to be alone. But you're not alone now. Sakura's worried. Kakashi-sensei believed in you. That's exactly why I have to cut those ties, Sasuke snarled, so I can focus on my hatred. I have to do this, Naruto. Chakra flared around them, electric tension filling the air. Naruto's mind raced. He pictured all the friends who'd bled to protect Sasuke's future. Choji, Neji, Kiba, Shikamaru, even Sakura, left heartbroken at the gates. They believed Naruto could save him. Pride roared in Naruto's heart, demanding he not fail. Wrath insisted it was time to fight Sasuke with everything he had. A swirl of red demonic chakra ignited around him, the 9 tails respawned beneath that, the 7 sins also awakened, each surging with chaotic fervor. Sasuke recognized the power rising in Naruto and answered by tugging at the cursed seal. Black marks spread across Sasuke's skin, his Sharingan blazing. This ends here, he said. You or me. Naruto closed his eyes for a beat, recalling Haku's final words. Protect the ones you love. Opening them, he threw himself into the fight. They met in midair over the waterfall, fists colliding, shockwaves rippling the pool below. Sasuke's speed had increased exponentially under the curse seal's influence. Naruto found himself battered by swift kicks, the Uchiha's eyes reading his every move. Snarling, Naruto summoned the 9 tails chakra more fully. Crimson energy cloaked him, shaping into feral outlines. Ears, claws. The statues trembled at their clash. Blow after blow cracked the stone beneath their feet. The sky darkened. Rain pattered. Each punch radiated lethal intent. Finally, panting, Naruto formed a swirling ball of demonic chakra in his palm, a crude proto-Rasengan shaped by the fox's power. Sasuke answered with Chidori, enhanced by the cursed seal, crackling with black energy. They leapt at each other, furious roars mingling with thunder. Their attacks collided in a white-hot explosion of power, forging a dome of swirling chakra. For an instant, Naruto felt the sins screaming inside him, all howling for release. Pride demanded victory. Wrath wanted total annihilation, but something else, an echo of empathy, stayed his hand. He didn't want to kill Sasuke, he wanted to save him. But Sasuke's blow came in unstoppable. The cursed seal empowered Chidori tore into Naruto's chest. Naruto's eyes went wide, pain searing his senses. He slammed his half-formed Rasengan into Sasuke's headband, slicing the metal and drawing blood across Sasuke's forehead. In that suspended moment, they stared at each other, two boys caught between destiny and choice. The massive detonation of chakra hurled them apart. Naruto's vision blurred as he tumbled into the raging river, the taste of copper in his mouth. He glimpsed Sasuke, also battered, landing on the opposite bank. When Naruto managed to stagger to his knees, Sasuke was walking away, refusing to deliver a killing blow. Eyes full of sorrow, the Uchiha vanished into the dense forest, heading toward Orochimaru. Naruto tried to scream his name, but black spots danced before his eyes. The last thing he remembered was the roar of the waterfall and the ache of failure gripping his heart. Aftermath and heartbreak. Sometime later, Naruto awoke in a hospital bed. His entire torso burned with pain, fresh bandages binding his wounds. Sunlight filtered through the window. Tsunade stood at the foot of his bed, arms folded. Her expression was soft, tinged with disappointment. Beside her was Shikamaru, face shadowed, and several other anxious faces. Hinata wringing her hands, Ino with tears in her eyes, Tenten chewing her lip. Sakura hadn't arrived yet, she was outside, gathering the courage to come in. Naruto groaned, forcing himself up on an elbow. Sasuke. He got away, Tsunade said quietly. Our squads found you unconscious. The rest of the retrieval team was rescued, wounded but alive. You all did your best. She hesitated. But Sasuke chose Orochimaru. He's gone. A hollow ache hollowed out Naruto's chest. He remembered the vow he'd made to Sakura, the hope he carried for Sasuke. All of it felt like ashes. Wrath flickered inside him, not aimed at Sasuke but at himself for failing. Pride was wounded, rebuffed by reality. Envy now welled up. Envy for the power Sasuke had tapped into, a power that overshadowed Naruto's own. He grit his teeth. Tsunade sat on the edge of the bed. For now, your priority is healing. After that, we'll figure out our next move. Understand? He nodded mutely. The sins churned, but he suppressed them. Yes, ma'am. She offered a weary smile. You did good, Naruto, just rest. Outside in the hallway, Sakura waited, heart pounding. She'd learned Sasuke was gone, and Naruto nearly died trying to save him. The guilt weighed heavily. Hinata quietly motioned for her to go in, but she froze, tears gathering. She turned and ran, uncertain how to face Naruto's pain when her own heartbreak was so raw. Hinata watched her go, torn between sympathy and a flicker of relief that she might be the first to comfort Naruto. Yet the weight of his wounds and the mission's failure hung over them all. Glimpses of the future days passed. The retrieval team slowly recovered, each bearing scars from their fights. Choji and Neji survived near-fatal injuries only thanks to Tsunade's skill. Kiba healed from his fierce struggle, Akamaru at his side. Shikamaru, haunted by the mission's outcome, wrestled with self-doubt, but none took it harder than Naruto. He spent long hours staring at the ceiling, replaying the final clash in his mind. Over and over, he wondered how to harness the sins to protect, not just to destroy. If only he had greater control, if only he could have used that power without mercy or confusion, maybe Sasuke wouldn't have slipped away. The self-recrimination burned. Yet glimmers of resolve kindled amidst the sorrow. Harem-wise, the small circle of girls close to Naruto, Sakura, Hinata, Ino, Tenten, rallied around him in subtle ways. Hinata brought him homemade tea, cheeks aflame. Ino dropped by with fresh flowers, scolding him for scaring everyone half to death. Tenten discussed training regimens, praising his gutsy fighting style. Even Sakura, after days of wrestling her grief, visited with an apology for everything, though her heart remained torn. Naruto appreciated their concern. Something about their voices and presence offered small rays of comfort. He realized that, while Sasuke was lost, he was not alone. One evening, Jiraiya appeared by Naruto's bedside. The Toad Sage had been quiet for a while, perhaps letting Naruto come to terms with the mission's result. Now he spoke plainly. "Get up, kid. Pack your stuff. We're leaving the village." Naruto blinked, startled. "What, 2.5 years," Jiraiya said, crossing his arms. "That's how long I want to take you on a training journey. Orochimaru won't hide Sasuke forever. We need you stronger. Strong enough to fight on equal footing with him next time. Strong enough to protect everyone you care about, and to handle whatever's inside you that's beyond the 9 tails." Naruto's heart hammered. Leaving Konoha for that long? He thought of the village, Tsunade, the missions. But then he remembered the Valley of the End, Sasuke's cold stare, the scar on his chest. He wanted to get stronger, to master the sins, to never feel that powerless again. So he swallowed hard and nodded. "All right, when do we go?" "Soon as you're fit to walk." Jiraiya gave him a measured look. "I'll clear it with Tsunade. Say your goodbyes." Part of Naruto ached at the idea of leaving, but the thirst for growth, whether it sprang from pride or wrath or even greed, overruled that hesitation. If it meant saving Sasuke in the end, he'd do it. Departure and unbroken spirit. A short time later, Naruto left the hospital on unsteady feet. Bandages still wrapped his torso. One by one, he visited friends. Choji, stuffing chips in his mouth, gave him a heartfelt thanks for everything. Neji bowed, quietly acknowledging that they all had to become stronger. Kiba smirked and promised that next time, they'd get Sasuke for sure. Shikamaru just sighed, calling everything troublesome but saying he was rooting for Naruto. He saved the hardest farewells for last. Sakura met him under the old academy tree, the same place they used to gather after class. Dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. She held her hands together, eyes cast down. "So, you're leaving," she said softly. He nodded, forcing a grin. "I'll be back. And when I return, I'll bring Sasuke with me. Count on it." She pressed her lips tight, tears glistened. "I couldn't do anything, and I'm sorry for always expecting you to fix everything alone." He shook his head. "Don't apologize. We'll get stronger, together. That's a promise." They stood in awkward silence. Then, with trembling fingers, she gently wrapped her arms around him in a brief, bittersweet embrace. Naruto stiffened, surprised, but let himself savor the moment. He could feel her heartbeat, the unspoken regrets and hopes between them. When she stepped back, her cheeks were damp. "Stay safe," she whispered. His throat too tight to speak, he nodded once more. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her beneath the fading light. At the village gate, Hinata waited, fiddling with her fingers. She mustered her courage and offered him a small pouch of herbal medicine. For your injuries," she managed, cheeks red. Please take care of yourself, Naruto-kun." He smiled. "Thanks, Hinata. I will." Moments later, Jiraiya strode up, rucksack over his shoulder. "Ready, kid?" Naruto glanced back at the walls of Konoha, the faces of dear friends, the bandaged monuments. His chest felt both heavy and buoyed by purpose. The sins stirred within, an unpredictable storm. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Let's go." They set off down the road, dust swirling around their sandals. The future ahead was uncertain. Countless threats, from Orochimaru to the Akatsuki, loomed. Sasuke was out there, waiting to be saved or lost forever. But Naruto carried with him every promise, every bond, and the seeds of an extraordinary power that no one else fully understood. As the village gates shrank behind them, Naruto gripped the straps of his pack. He replayed the vow in his mind. "Next time, I won't fail." And so began his journey to master both the 9 tails and the 7 deadly sins within. Strength was the goal, but beyond that lay something deeper. The will to protect, the will to save a friend who had forsaken them, and the will to forge a new destiny for himself, and perhaps for the entire shinobi world. He wouldn't stop until he'd kept every promise he'd ever made. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. Rise of a God, the Akatsuki War. The wind howled over the cragged plateau. Naruto Uzumaki stood at the edge of a cliff, the sun dipping behind him. 2.5 years had passed since he left Konoha with Jiraiya, vowing to grow strong enough to save Sasuke. Now, older and more formidable, he'd returned with a deeper mastery of both the Nine Tails and the enigmatic powers of the Seven Sins. His footsteps carried him home, yet the weight on his shoulders only grew heavier. The Akatsuki had begun hunting Jinchuriki in earnest. War loomed on the horizon, and Sasuke still walked the path of darkness under Orochimaru's influence. A new era of challenges Naruto's path. He inhaled the scent of pine and fresh grass as he crossed the rebuilt Konoha gates. So much had changed. The village, under Tsunade's guidance, had erected new walls and paved new roads since the invasion. Passing villagers shot him startled looks. He was taller, wearing a slightly different outfit, and the aura around him felt different too. Instead of brash cheer, Naruto's eyes reflected a fierce resolve. But his grin still radiated that old spark of optimism. The first to greet him was Sakura, who dashed from the Hokage Tower the moment word spread of his arrival. He barely recognized her. She'd grown stronger under Tsunade's tutelage. The moment their gazes locked, relief shone in her eyes. There was so much unsaid between them, especially about Sasuke, but for now, they simply smiled and exchanged a quick, fierce hug. "In just 2 years, you've changed so much," Sakura said, stepping back with a small flush on her cheeks. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. "Hey, you too. Bet you can punch craters in the ground now." She huffed with mock annoyance. "You have no idea." But her expression soon turned serious. "Come on. Lady Tsunade wants to see you. Akatsuki's making moves." Those words sent a chill down his spine. Jiraiya had warned him. Each time they heard of another Jinchuriki captured or killed, Naruto's determination hardened. Now, the fight had come to their doorstep. Reunions and reverberations inside the Hokage's office. Tsunade sat behind her desk, brow knitted. Papers detailing sightings of Akatsuki members, Itachi, Kisame, Deidara, Sasori, littered the surface. Kakashi stood at her side, arms folded, while Shizune quietly organized the chaos. Naruto bowed in greeting, feeling an odd surge of nostalgia for the old days. Tsunade cut straight to the point. "Welcome back, Naruto. We don't have much time for pleasantries. The Akatsuki are after the tailed beasts, and you're top of their list." Naruto nodded. "I'm ready for them. Jiraiya-sensei and I trained non-stop. I won't let them take me or hurt the village." Kakashi's visible eye curved in a smile. "I can sense your new strength. But it's not just them we have to worry about. Orochimaru hasn't stopped his experiments. Any word on Sasuke?" Naruto clenched his fists. "Nothing direct. Jiraiya tried to track Orochimaru's hideouts, but Sasuke's steps vanish every time." He sucked in a breath. "But I know we'll cross paths sooner or later." Tsunade gave a brisk nod. "Good. For now, I'm assembling a team to investigate a lead on Akatsuki. You'll be part of it. Sakura too." At that, Naruto's heart lifted. Working together again felt right. He wanted to see how far they'd both come. Maybe, in protecting the village from the Akatsuki, he'd find a clue about Sasuke, too. Dangers in the dark. Multiple POVs over the coming weeks. Naruto and Sakura formed a new Team 7 alongside Kakashi and a temporary fourth member, Sai, a mysterious root operative under Danzo. Tensions ran high. Sai's emotionless politeness rubbed Naruto the wrong way, especially when Sai casually spoke of Sasuke as a traitor unworthy of rescue. Naruto nearly lost his temper more than once, feeling wrath stir, but pride and experience reminded him to stay in control. Despite the friction, the mission compelled them forward. Rumors placed an Akatsuki duo near the land of rivers. Along the way, they encountered old friends. Team 10, with Shikamaru now a seasoned strategist. Team 8, including Hinata, who beamed when she saw Naruto. A new confidence surrounded her, and she seemed bolder, though still prone to flushing pink when Naruto spoke to her with his new, deeper voice. Each step forward hammered home that they were no longer naive genin. Their foes were S-rank criminals. The stakes were life and death. Naruto, fueled by the 7 swirling powers within, vowed not to let anyone fall. The growth of bonds, and a hint of harem, between missions, Naruto's interactions with the girls in his life shifted. Sakura, fierce and determined, found herself relying on his presence more than ever. They'd always been close friends, but glimpses of deeper feelings flickered between them, especially when they reminisced about Sasuke. Hinata, also blossoming, trained tirelessly with Neji to refine her Byakugan and gentle fist. She sometimes dropped by to spar with Naruto, who teased her gently but admired her unwavering kindness. Tenten, seeing Naruto's relentless drive, pitched in with weapon demonstrations, occasionally battling him in friendly matches. Ino, likewise, found herself drawn to Naruto's resilient spirit, still brash, but tempered by new wisdom. Naruto, for his part, was often oblivious to the subtle hints these kunoichi showed. Training and the looming crisis kept his mind elsewhere. Yet now and again, he felt a pull, a warmth that reminded him he had a life here beyond war, beyond saving Sasuke. Maybe, once peace reigned, he could explore the tangled possibilities of the heart. For the time being, that hope became one more reason to fight. Pain's wrath descends not long after. News slammed the village. Akatsuki had struck in the land of rain. Their leader, Pain, took center stage, capturing more Jinch raided to gather information, leaving Naruto behind to ensure the Leaf's safety. Days later, Jiraiya's final message arrived. A toad summons, battered and near collapse, revealing that Pain possessed the Rinnegan and plans to assault Konoha soon. Shock rippled through the village. Naruto reeled from the loss. Jiraiya, his mentor, his father figure, had fallen in battle. Each word of that message seared into Naruto's heart. He locked himself away, grief pounding in his chest. The sins responded to his turmoil. Wrath boiled. Pride threatened to crush him. Sloth whispered that it was hopeless. But the memory of Jiraiya's final advice, that Naruto must never give up on peace, cut through the darkness. With Tsunade's blessing, Naruto retreated to Mount Myoboku. There, guided by Fukasaku, he delved into sage mode training, fusing the toad arts with his own monstrous chakra. But that wasn't all. He also grappled with the seven sins, learning how to siphon their distinct emotional energies into a single, balanced reservoir. Sometimes he failed spectacularly, resulting in literal shockwaves of power. Other times, he glimpsed a synergy that could elevate him to unimaginable heights. He tried to put his grief into perspective. Jiraiya wouldn't want him consumed by rage. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting everyone. The memory of that promise anchored him whenever wrath threatened to overshadow his reason. Then the worst happened. Pain attacked Konoha, leveling the village with an almighty push that tore buildings from their foundations. People scattered, screaming. Tsunade exhausted her chakra protecting as many as she could. Sakura and the others fought valiantly, but Pain's powers were overwhelming. All hope seemed lost, until Naruto arrived on Gamabunta's back, sage robes billowing, eyes gleaming with golden toad irises. The ensuing clash became the stuff of legend. Pain's 6 paths assailed Naruto with gravitational force and soul-rending techniques. Naruto countered with sage-art Rasengans, unleashing near-godlike bursts of energy. The entire battlefield quaked each time they collided. Wrath mingled with pride, but Naruto kept a grip on empathy, even as Pain battered him relentlessly. In the final stand, Naruto pinned Pain's central body, Yahiko's body, using the synergy of the Nine Tails cloak and a controlled wave of sin-fueled chakra. Instead of delivering a killing blow, he recalled Jiraiya's teachings and tried to understand Pain's suffering. In that moment, pride yielded to compassion, wrath tempered by mercy. He convinced Nagato, the real mastermind behind Pain, to reverse the carnage. Lives lost were resurrected in a whirlwind of light. Nagato died restoring what he had destroyed, leaving Naruto a hero in the eyes of all Konoha. His victory proved his capacity for overwhelming power, yet also for mercy. The 5 great nations whispered his name with awe. Naruto Uzumaki, the boy who defied despair. The war ignites peace was short-lived. Tobi, secretly Obito Uchiha, replaced Nagato as the final driving force behind the Akatsuki. With Madara's resurrection looming, the 4th Great Ninja War erupted. Alliances formed among the 5 villages, and Naruto found himself at the center of their strategy. Tsunade, reinstated as Hokage after nearly sacrificing everything to protect Konoha, demanded Naruto be guarded. If the Akatsuki captured him and the Nine Tails, the world would face ruin. But Naruto refused to cower. He insisted on fighting alongside the allied forces. When word spread that Sasuke might appear on the battlefield as one of Madara's pawns, Naruto's resolve hardened. All the training, every heartbreak, every spark of hope. This was the moment to prove it had meaning. Days of brutal conflict ensued. White Zetsu clones surged in endless waves. Legendary Edo Tensei undead clashed with living shinobi. Naruto's presence on the battlefield became a beacon of morale, his unstoppable energy rallying everyone. When the real Madara arrived, resurrected with near-limitless power, the earth trembled, shinobi lines faltered. Even the cage struggled to match him. Naruto's paw in that swirling chaos, Naruto tapped into the fullness of the seven sins. He'd learned to channel each emotion at will. Wrath for raw, explosive power, pride for unwavering confidence and clarity. Greed to devour negative energies and convert them into strength. Gluttony to absorb residual chakra from the environment. Envy to mimic and counter enemy techniques. Lust reinterpreted as fierce passion, safeguarding cherished bonds. Sloth ironically giving him heightened endurance and a calm center when the battle raged hottest. In a flash of brilliance, he combined them with the Nine Tails chakra, forging a new form. His entire being glowed in golden red light, a swirling pattern across his skin that radiated the might of the ancient sins and the primal fox combined. Shinobi from every nation gaped at him, momentarily forgetting the war. He seemed almost divine, an avatar of unstoppable will. The final battle. Madara and Kagaya. Madara unleashed meteor upon meteor, tried to subdue the alliance with his perfect Susanoo. Naruto countered each cataclysmic strike, fists blazing with sin-infused Rasengans that shattered giant boulders and tore through the Susanoo's armor. With help from the allied shinobi, he forced Madara back. Then came the twist. Black Zetsu betrayed Madara, reviving Kagaya Otsutsuki, the progenitor of chakra itself. The battlefield warped into surreal dimensions of lava, ice, and void. Naruto, battered and breathless, found himself side by side with Sasuke, returned under complicated circumstances, both resentment and regret warring in the Uchiha's eyes. They had no choice but to cooperate against Kagaya. Sakura, Kakashi, and Obito also joined the fray, each playing critical roles. Tension sizzled between Naruto and Sasuke. But in the face of an alien goddess, old grudges had to wait. Kaguya's power dwarfed anything they'd seen. She shifted reality at will, launching bone spikes that dissolved matter. Naruto's sin-empowered god form faltered against her overwhelming might. Exhaustion weighed on him, searing pain lancing through each muscle. But memories of everyone he loved, Hinata's shy support, Sakura's unwavering loyalty, the trust of friends like Shikamaru, Kiba, Tenten, Ino, filled his heart with unstoppable fire. He refused to surrender. With Sasuke's Rinnegan controlling space-time, and Naruto's unstoppable barrage of Rasen Shuriken multiplied by the sins, they cornered Kagaya. In a final, cataclysmic exchange, Naruto unleashed an ultimate technique. A swirling sphere of combined sin energies, fused with the Nine Tails Tail Beast Bomb. The resulting spiral beam tore at Kaguya's form. The dimension cracked. Screaming, Kagaya weakened enough for the sealing technique to take hold. Light exploded. When the dust cleared, Kagaya was gone, sealed away once more. Naruto and Sasuke landed hard, panting, battered nearly beyond recognition. The war was over, leaving the two of them at the epicenter of a ravaged battlefield. Shinobi around the world felt the shift. An impossible threat had been vanquished. A new dawn, and the choice amid the swirling ashes. Sasuke faced Naruto one last time. Torn between gratitude and hatred, he declared his intention to break the cycle of the ninja world by force, believing only he could reshape it. Naruto refused to let him commit another sin. They fought again in the very place they once clashed. The Valley of the End, two demigods battered from war, putting everything on the line. This time, Naruto held nothing back. He called on the synergy of the sins, forging a final transformation that balanced wrath with compassion, pride with humility. Light and darkness collided. Fists shattered stone. In an exhausted finish, both collapsed, arms severed, but hearts laid bare. Sasuke, seeing Naruto's unyielding determination to protect everyone, finally let the hatred go. He acknowledged a brother. Resolution and the promise of tomorrow. In the aftermath, the allied shinobi forces returned to their villages, battered but triumphant. Peace negotiations began, with the cage pledging to forge a new era of cooperation. The leaf welcomed Naruto home as a savior, though he disliked the worshipful stares. He only cared that his friends were safe and Sasuke was on the path to atonement. Those heady months of reconstruction saw Naruto's presence in the village grow even stronger. Tsunade, stepping down from the role of Hokage, oversaw a peaceful transition to Kakashi as the sixth Hokage. Yet rumors already circulated that Naruto would one day inherit the title, fulfilling his dream. He took each day in stride, using his newfound power responsibly. Sasuke embarked on a redemption journey, seeking to understand the world and himself. He promised Naruto they would meet again, this time as allies. Naruto watched him go, heart light. Finally, the bitterness between them had eased. Harem resolution. In the months that followed, Naruto found a strange swirl of interest around him. Sakura remained a close companion, her old feelings for Sasuke shifting towards something more complicated. Hinata, having long admired Naruto's spirit, stepped more boldly into his life. Ino and Tenten, impressed by his unwavering will, also found themselves drawn to him. Naruto, once the lonely outcast, now had more affection than he knew what to do with. He approached it with his usual earnestness, forging strong bonds with each girl in different ways. Romance blossoming in multiple directions. Some teased it was a shinobi harem, but Naruto simply felt blessed not to be alone anymore. It wasn't a single fairy tale ending, life never was, but there was genuine warmth, a sense of acceptance and closeness. He cared deeply for each person who stood by him. The future stretched out, offering countless possibilities for his heart and the hearts entwined with his. Epilogue. Legend of the Seven Sins. Atop the rebuilt Hokage monument, Naruto gazed over the village at dawn. He could hear the bustle of early morning traders, the clank of construction finishing the last war repairs. Birds soared across a pinkening sky. He inhaled, letting the crisp air fill his lungs. The sins within him felt quiet, at peace. Wrath was calm, pride subdued, envy stilled, gluttony, greed, lust, and sloth resting in harmonious silence. Each was a part of him, but none held mastery over him. They'd been forged into something new. An unbreakable will to protect, to love, to strive for peace no matter the cost. He caught sight of Sakura and Hinata below, heading to meet him for breakfast. Tenten waved from the distance, and Ino lingered by the flower shop, giving him a bright grin. He felt a surge of joy, reminiscent of that lonely boy painting graffiti on the Hokage faces so long ago. Now, he was recognized, not as a monster or a clown, but as a hero. One who defied fate itself. Sasuke's redemption journey might take years, but Naruto trusted in their bond. The other nations stirred with hope, forging alliances that were unthinkable before. And though threats would inevitably arise again, new villains, new ambitions, Naruto knew he possessed the power and the unity of friends to stand against anything. He settled on the monument's edge, letting the wind ruffle his hair. A smile curved his lips. "Old man," he murmured, recalling the third Hokage's gentle faith, "I did it. I'll keep doing it, protecting everyone who matters. That's my Nindo." He closed his eyes, thinking of Jiraiya's final words, of Haku's compassion, of the vow he made on that cold, misty bridge. He had risen from being the outcast container of the Nine Tails to the unstoppable wielder of the Seven Deadly Sins. The world now knew him as a legend. But in his heart, he was just Naruto Uzumaki, knuckle-headed, determined, loyal beyond reason, and brimming with a love for life. The sun crested the horizon, painting Konoha in gold. His story was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. End of Chapter 5 to be continued.